All right, everybody, welcome to Philo Sapience, where religion meets reason. And we are back after a long time, after maybe 3 weeks, Martin, I guess, right? So after 3 weeks, we are back with another English stream. And as usual, we're not going to do anything different. We're going to be running some Dawah streams, some guest caller in one of the Dawah streams, and, just analyze their arguments, see whether the arguments or the counter arguments have any discrepancy, they hold any water, there is any weight to their arguments or the guest scholars arguments. So we're just going to see. We are back to something that we have been talking a lot about. I think this is one of the things, maybe if not 10 times, probably, I mean, maybe if not 15 times, at least we have talked about it 10 times or so, or maybe more than that, probably. I just can't remember. We started this channel, Madin, I think April of 2023, maybe, right? If yeah, one fine day, I think I remember, I just said, okay, let's do something, and we had spoken about doing something, some blog or something back in 2019, and finally in 2023 we started this channel. So it's already been like what, 2.5 years, close to maybe 2 years, 4 months or so. So, anyways, what we're gonna do is first welcome Madin. Madin, how are you doing?
I'm very good.
All right. You seem a little bit. Seems like you're too. What do you call? Too cold today. Is it? Is
Cold?
it? Have you,
What do you
your
mean?
your response? Your response seemed a little too cold. Oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good.
Well,
Okay.
we're dealing with
What,
a very cold
what are you
issues.
talking about? I'm good. That's about it.
I'm good. I just want to get on with it. We're talking about a very cold issue, so we need to be very cold and brute. You know?
Okay. All right. Let's jump right into it. All right. So this is I don't know what this guest scholar's name is, Dr. Me, right? Whatever the name that guy has. Let's start it.
Mhm.
The problem is, I think he's gonna talk about it. So listen to it.
Use that if an all-powerful, all-knowing, because of this argument, I'm an atheist.
What's your background, Dr. Am? Is it like, well, do you believe in God?
No, I'm an atheist.
You're an atheist. Okay. Is there a reason why you're an atheist?
Well, it's because of this argument.
Okay,
So,
let's hear the argument from your side.
so as we all know, the logical problem of evil argues that if an all-powerful, all-knowing, good God exists, then evil should not exist, right?
No, I mean, sorry, I know that position, but it's a non sequitur if you want to use logical forms.
So you think that's a non sequitur?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, because God's existence is not dependent on any good or evil. God is existing regardless of anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously.
Why do you think it's necessary for good or evil to exist for God to exist?
Isn't it more reasonable to think that the existence of pointless suffering means either God doesn't exist or he's an all-powerful and all-good?
No, there was a point in time. Sorry, Islam, just one second. Do you know, there was a point in time when there was nothing other than God Almighty who existed. So the question is, when only God existed, where would you get the understanding of good or evil?
Well, I think there's a term in philosophy where we have a.
Yeah. I'm not sure even is his name Hashim. I'm not sure if this Hashim person even understands what the logical problem of evil is, and
Exactly. Yeah, I thought you wanted to listen to it for a little bit longer before pausing, but I realized that point. He jumped in, he stopped Hakim, and then he said utterly nonsensical thing, basically, right? So
It's, do we need to spell it out for the audience, or maybe the logical problem of evil is such that, very similar to as an analogy, like a square triangle can't exist because there's a contradiction. If there's a square, there can't be a triangle. If there's a triangle in one place, let's say in one location or whatever, you can't have a square and a triangle at the same time, being one entity or something. That's just a contradiction, right? Or a contradiction might be something like a tree exists, the tree exists and not exists at the same time. These are contradictions. So the logical problem of evil is that God's attributes is logically contradictory, or conceptually we can rule out the existence of God. Because it's impossible. It's not merely improbable, but impossible that like a square triangle, because it's impossible. It's not merely improbable. It's not like highly unlikely that there's a non-zero probability a square triangle can exist, but it's just highly unlikely. It's not even possible. It's not even possible metaphysically or logically for a square triangle to exist, and similarly metaphysically or logically for a God to exist at the same time they're existing evil in the world. Because God is all powerful, all merciful, all compassionate, and he has all the resources to stop evil. And given there's some evil, and therefore God is ruled out entirely logically. What is Hashim's arguments got to do with anything? When God existed, he says, when God existed, there wasn't any good and evil. So how would you understand good and evil then? That has nothing to do with what we framed here, right? And the argument, similarly, his first point was, what did he say? Good and evil are not dependent. The existence of God is not dependent on good and evil.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that the right one?
And yeah. That's what he said. That's what he said, right? Yeah.
Well, that seems like he's developing a point about to say something, but from the bat, it still seems like indicates to me it doesn't understand the logical problem of evil.
Right. And I just, Madin, I'm just going to digress a little bit and point out what is a contradiction, right? And how do you put it in symbolic language? It can be said to be not of, in the brackets, P and not P, right? So you have P and not P, brackets, not. This is a logical contradiction. This is the definition of, in symbolic language. This is the, you can't have P and not P true at the same time. Basically, it has to be false, right? That's if you want to spell it out that way. So anyway, yeah, I think he just doesn't understand. I think, and he stops Islam as well. But let's go a little bit deeper into what their argument is, right?
Sets of rules that tells us what is morally good and what is morally wrong. But I forgot.
No, but that's not my question. My question.
You're talking about axiology.
Yeah, we are talking about good and evil is a characteristics of a creation. Yeah, if there was no creation and only the creator existed, then your whole argument basically just falls apart.
Oh, it gets worse than that. Yeah, I mean, it would put severe limitations.
Creation does exist, and suffering is part of that, isn't it? Still a problem for the idea of like.
No, it's the opposite. Let me run through a few things.
What is he talking about? If creation didn't exist, but only the creator existed, your argument falls apart. Why? What's he trying to get at? Can you any of you elaborate?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Hi guys.
Hey, welcome to Cali.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think what Hashim is trying to say is this, and I think if he is alluding to that what he's trying to say is that whether or not evil exists or good exists, the existence of God is independent of that. That is what he said earlier, right? And when he said that, even when creation did not exist, God existed. So again, what he's trying to say is, I guess, then I mean, what that would imply is that God is not good, or he is sort of, we will call an amoral being. Now, that is what is the implication of what he's saying. I'm not sure if he realizes that.
Yeah,
but
I totally agree with that. Yeah,
this is what he would be. Now, if he argue that, if he really wants to argue that, then okay, then he'll have to accept that God is an amoral being. He's not good or bad. He just is, because he's independent of good or evil.
Kylie, sorry, interject.
Yeah.
Isn't there a thought of Islamic thought? Probably 9th century. Maybe Mutazilas were those who thought God was amoral rather, right? It was Al-Kindi.
No.
So one of those guys who did spell out this problem, right? Maybe Mutazilis.
I think Ghazali. I think we reviewed a paper, probably not directly, but we were reading something that I think there's a guy called Dr. Shoaib Malik or something, Shoaib Ahmed. I don't know. That's his name. And he wrote a paper about Ghazali, because I've not read Ghazali directly ever. And I think Ghazali has actually said that, whatever God does, God can actually do anything. God can declare anything as good or anything as bad or evil. So, God is not bound by anything. So I think if you look at that, I think you could say that God is an amoral being. And I think this is not just something that has sort of faded away from Muslim theology. I think many
It
Muslims
still
do.
exists, right?
It still
Exactly.
exists, right? They
And
still
and
today agree, and I think
they
it
they
exists.
won't say explicitly spell it out that way, but
Yeah, they
if
would.
you dig deep, they'll exactly come to this point that whatever God does, and that's if
I
it's
mean,
he says, if he asks you to do it, then it's good.
exactly.
If he doesn't ask you to do it, then it's bad. Basically, if
I mean,
he Mhm.
even even people who say that God cannot do injustice or something like that, even from them I've heard, and I of course I'm from memory I can recall Mufti Yasir saying something like this. So generally, but he's very inconsistent in his philosophy. So I'm not sure if I should refer to what he says. But I mean, when it was useful, when it is useful, or when it's convenient for him, most of the time he would say that God is just and God is good and all of that. But he has also said to in response to something that using the word just for God is sort of meaningless, because saying whether God is just is doesn't mean anything, because God is the master. He is the owner who can do whatever he wants. So in a way,
Exactly.
he again, this is also referring to the ideology or the point of view that God is an amoral being. And if this is what he's alluding to, again, if this is what Hashim is saying, and I think this is what he's saying, but he does not understand the implications of that.
I'm not sure that's what he is saying. I think we're kind of straying from his point. I mean, I don't think he's trying to say God's amorality here, referring to that. He's actually
No,
saying
it's
the if you don't have evil and good in this world, there was a point where God didn't exist. Sorry, the world didn't exist. God only existed, and in that, that you wouldn't be able to. Then it seems as though the logical problem of evil won't go
Okay,
through. But that's what he's trying
I'll
to
tell you
say.
what he I'll tell you
Yeah.
what he's trying to say. Let me put it in another way. What he's trying to say is that good or bad is not an attribute of God. It is what God does.
And how do you
Now,
know
what God,
this? I
sorry,
didn't get that at all. I didn't get that at all from his
I
from
think
his.
this, again, Philo, you think what I understood, what I'm sort of,
yeah.
No,
I
I
think
think
maybe we are
I
digging
think
a
this is what
little
he's
too
saying.
deep into what
What
he's
he's,
saying.
yeah.
Maybe he's like
I
too.
think what he's saying is that this is not an attribute of God. And because what when he said that good and evil is God is independent of that, which means that you shouldn't say that God is good or evil. God, the attribute good or evil, or is it's not an attribute of God. Rather, it's just something that God does when He creates creation. And then I think he would, now again, I'm just maybe guessing what he might say later on, but he might even say that whatever God does, God is good. I don't know if he says
I
that or
think
not.
Ali, I thought the same that you're thinking, but now on a second thought, I think we are giving him too much credit for
Yeah, but
his
let's see what
clever
he says. But I think
I feel okay. So I did
let's
ask
see.
one of you guys to help
Yeah,
elaborate. So you did the
yeah,
right thing then to dive deep and trying to look for an intelligible way of articulating
yeah, yeah,
otherwise incoherence, right? Right.
yeah.
But
This is what
so
I could understand. This is this is
so,
the sense I could draw out of what Hashim was
yeah,
saying.
yeah. Well, I find that's fine
If
then.
if
I
it,
mean,
if he's
yeah.
saying something coherent, I think this is what he's saying. let
Okay.
let let me word it that way.
Yeah. So let me just say what I thought before Kylie helped give him the charitable interpretation. It just seemed like he was trying to. Well, I don't even know what he said, but what I would say, so I can't really guess, to be honest. But he's trying to. He said, there was a point where God didn't. Well, the world didn't exist, but only God existed. The logical problem, as though, wouldn't apply there or something. And my response to that would be, not even fully understanding what he's saying, is that that's just a hypothetical where the world didn't exist and there was God, right? Why are we bothered
You're
about
good.
that? It's like somebody making the argument for the Kalam cosmological argument, saying that the universe began to exist, the second premise, and me saying, well, there was a time where the universe didn't exist. So that Kalam, how would you know the Kalam is true? Like, what are you talking about, right? Right? We live in a world where the universe did begin to exist. Let's hypothetically accept the second premise. And therefore, if the theist I'm sure the theist will respond like that. We live in a world where the universe did begin to exist. So this is why we can affirm the truthfulness of premise 2. right? And you can say this to any argument. All men are mortal. Like I said, and somebody comes along and says, "What if you didn't know that any men existed? Then you wouldn't know men were mortal." So there you go. The argument falls. No, what are you talking about? We don't assess arguments like that on the hypothetical reality where we're ignorant of something, right? So in this world, we see evil, or what we, and then we know what a good God is and all powerful is, and that contradicts the fact that there was a point of time where there wasn't any world. Yeah, we may be uncertain in that situation. We're not in that situation. So what are you talking about? But even then, the logical problem would apply in the sense that if we do have a God and he proclaims to be, these characteristics, anything that is then identifiable in that God that might contradict it, yeah, but we're not in that situation, right? So why talk about this abstract hypothetical situation where we weren't at? Because we're in this situation, where we're trying to figure out whether God is reconcilable with the data in this world, right? That's it.
Can I add something to it? I mean, just I think Dr. Me was maybe not very precise in what he said initially when he was giving his argument, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think when he said that the problem or this argument from evil is an argument against the existence of God, I think he should have been very clear that it is an argument against the existence of an all-good, all-knowing, and an all-powerful God.
He does spell it out later on, but he's not very fluid in his explanation.
So I think,
that.
and if we and let's say if he's making that sort of imprecise statement, then, and maybe if, again, let me try to make some sense out of what Hashim is trying to say. If one thing that Hashim might be saying is that whether or not God is good or evil, although when the point where when Hashim said that God even existed when creation didn't, so that doesn't make any sense. But if Hashim initially, when he said that this is not an argument against the existence of God, I think I would have agreed in principle that okay, it is not an argument against the existence of any kind of God. It is an argument against the existence of exactly of a God with these three attributes.
I think they should be able to pick up on that. The logical problem of evil is very famous, very
they
popular.
Won't. I know, but they might. I think what they might be saying is that, and why they might be saying this is because they would say that this should not make you an atheist. This could make you a deist. This would make you not believe in a certain kind of God, but this should not make you an atheist.
But then they're feigning ignorance as if this problem doesn't apply to
you
them,
could say
right?
that.
Or I mean, they're feigning because this problem is specifically tailored towards Abrahamic gods.
Because they nitpick a lot, right?
Yeah.
They won't. I mean, they won't even. If someone makes a mistake, even in wording an argument, they will try to sort of criticize immediately and sort of point out, oh no, this is not how it is, or whatever. They'll not say, are you trying to say this?
Right.
So this is not generally their approach. So I think that's why they will not be correcting the argument, making clarifying his argument for him. I think they'll never do that. So that's why I think they might be saying that. But again, I'm probably being charitable, but that is what my understanding is.
All right. Yeah. Maybe. Okay. Let's move on, shall we?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, let's move.
Yeah, let's go.
The way you sit on it. So for one thing, if the good or powerful God and so on was limited and unable to create anything with any perceived negativity or quote unquote evil from that is relatively so or appears so according to any other element of creation, he would be extremely limited. So that would be a problem. It's creating a straw man of it, essentially, because it's no longer all powerful. It's essentially saying, should have stopped at angels, should be limited to angels. So actually, there's already a logical problem baked into proposing that this is.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are so many problems
Islam is making a very dangerous argument.
Yeah, very dangerous argument. All right, Madan, go ahead.
Yeah, so it kind of shows that they do pick up on the idea that it's a good. I'm pretty sure Dr. Me, is it Dr. Me? Does it say Dr. Me? That's too small for my eyesight.
Yeah, Dr. Me. Yeah, Dr. Me.
But that's so evil that I've got this sort of eyesight. But so what was I saying? Yeah, so it seems as though they do pick up on the idea that this is a good, or merciful, compassionate God that they're talking about. I think they all know this. So I think the over charitable interpretation that they're just being hygienic, philosophically hygienic, that that doesn't give him good grounds to be an atheist. It might give him good grounds to be a non-theist of a particular kind, but it doesn't give him grounds to reject all forms of deities. I think we're being way too charitable. I think the Occam's razor, the easier, simpler explanation is Hashim didn't understand what's going on.
Okay, Madan. Yeah, it could be possible. I think so. Yeah.
Because Islam is also kind of congratulating Hakim on his points or something.
I just want to predict one thing. Sorry, I just take 10 seconds. I'm predicting right now, and I might be run out wrong, but I'm quite sure that if 2 or 3 people argue, let's say Mansoor and Hashim and Islam, all 3 of them give arguments within this video, at least 2 of them will be giving contradictory arguments. Like, both of them will not be compatible with each other.
Possibly, yeah,
I'm quite sure. The kind of the way they're arguing, they will be arguing, sort of contradicting themselves.
Yeah.
See,
go ahead.
Yeah,
but
I
don't
think
think
an entirely different tunnel to Islam, and just sometimes we do that as well, right?
And and you know what I've just noticed again, Islam often, I think this is the second time that I'm noticing this. Islam comes up with his own version of the argument, and it's definitely worse than the general argument that is usually presented. So again, he's come up with a worse version.
In his mind. He thinks in his mind that he's trying to solve it much better than what the
much
past
better. But it creates more problems for him.
And he creates more problems for himself.
He does not. He does not think what are the problems within his argument. How would someone counter his arguments? I don't know. He's because the argument that he just made. I don't know. He didn't think the implications of that.
For a thinking atheist or thinking whatever agnostic, he has given them one more leash. Basically,
Exactly.
He's saying, "Okay, pick my argument now. Break this one. There is another one. You already had one problem, of evil, logical problem of evil. Now I'm giving you another one. That is the limits of God. That is in itself contradictory. I mean, you just can't make it fit with this argument of evil, right? There's no matter what you do, you'll always see that God has some limits.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
Madan, go ahead. Sorry.
So I was kind of going to say something. Maybe it has the same effect. I mean, the idea that if you if an all-powerful, all-merciful God couldn't create evil, it will just limit him, and that will be a limited God. And I just think that this is such an outrageous point. It's just so silly when the fact that in every other domain and topic and subject matter, when anything gets discussed, they talk about the precise character and constraints and limits of God. I mean, whenever confronted with the problem of can God become non-God, or can God create a stone that he can't himself lift, we talk about that's definitionally, essentially, logically impossible for God to do that, right? And every other endeavor, can God not?
Can God lie?
Can God lie? Can God become a human? Become Jesus? No, it's impossible. Can God be 3 people? No, God. But wait a minute. Now, in this topic where they really want to, they have a bias against trying to avoid the logical problem of evil. Now they really want to express the idea that if God didn't create evil, if God couldn't create evil, that would limit him. Well, if God couldn't be 3 persons or couldn't come in human form, which is the exact grand argument against the Trinitarian Christian model of Christianity, right? Which is that God is doing logical impossible things, right? And logical impossibilities can't exist. Here they say because it would limit a God. Therefore, even a perfectly good, perfectly powerful being, because he can't be limited because he's perfectly powerful, he needs to be able to commit evil as well. Right? They're accepting, they're taking off the limits of God in order to allow for things that sound like logical contradictions. And I think that's just an obvious bias, right? In this conversation with Hakim, I would simply say, then why do you object to all these other situations? You should openly say, for example, God can kill himself. God can create another God. God can become 3.
No, I think what Madan, what Khali said has the perfect ace card or trump card against this argument, right? Hakim's is that if he can create evil because otherwise it will limit him, then he can also lie, and you just can't tell whether what he has done or whatever he has written or commanded, if it is he who has given the Quran or any of the holy books, Why can't he lie? Why can't it all just be a lie?
That's also,
That's about it. That's about it. I think that's all you
That's-
need at that point.
That's an implication as well. That's an implication.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
I mean, yeah.
I'm questioning their coherence as well in terms of consistency as well. You know, not merely the repercussions of it. You know, yeah, of course. If God is able to now create evil, it creates a kind of worms. It might cause self-destruction to the entire theism, right?
Yeah.
But there's multiple problems. There's multiple problems with that. So there's multiple problems with this idea of accepting. So no, I also want to just reject as a plain, forgetting just the repercussions of it. I also want to reject the plain idea that if there's an all-powerful being and he's all good, then it would limit his all-powerfulness if he can't create evil. Because when you think of the concept of all-powerfulness, we're not thinking about any type of all-powerfulness. We're talking about an all-powerful being that is also good. Is good and all-powerful. We're not talking about a being that is somewhat good and somewhat evil and all-powerful. We're talking about a being that is all-powerful, but and just good. Now, that itself might have some issues. And that itself might have some issues, but if we just ignore those issues, let's accept the idea that it's logically possible for an all-powerful being to exist, an all-good being to exist. I don't think it's logically. I think it would be logically contradictory to accept even a speck of evil that's compatible with this, because otherwise we lose meaning of these words. You know, all good and all-powerful. We're talking about perfect benevolence. And
yeah, I think the problem starts just with the single statement as all powerful or all good. To me, it seems like they are themselves contradictory, right? All powerful. I just don't think something can be all powerful, because then you run into those simple problems, which I think are problematic, right? I mean, people just laugh at those things, right? You know,
well, that's why a lot of So that's why a lot of theologians have modified it to, yes, they may bite the bullet
maximally. They say maximally, right?
And then we do need to entertain that. We could somewhat give a applaud to ourselves and go, all right, we at least defeated the all-powerful phrasing. But then they could just rework it to, maybe the all-powerful phrasing was just human beings describing it wrongly, right? It doesn't ontologically defeat the problem just because we got it wrong. Maybe it's not all-powerful. Maybe it is, what we meant by all-powerful all along was something like the most powerful, incompatible with its good nature. That way it avoids that, because I think, as you said, all-powerful as a concept in and of itself sounds logically contradictory, because there's going to be something that is not powerful to do, right? The all word, it seems all encompassing, but at the same time, there might be a semantical problem there, right? It's just problems in our language. So you may say, all right, what we mean by all is we mean maximum in relation, in conjunction with its nature. And that way, then you end up having to deal with that one. And the remarkability of the logical problem of evil is that it can deal with both.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're totally right. And I think I will just give a few more examples of what God should possibly be then, in fact, should be able to do and should actually do if what Islam is saying is actually it, if his argument is correct. Well, I've already given one example, which is he should be able to lie. He should be able to do something unjust. He should be able to be unjust to his creation, because why would he otherwise? If he's not able to be unjust with his creation, then that would be a limitation. Then he will not be all powerful. He should be. Now the next point that I'm mentioning you is something and is an implication of Islam's argument, which goes entirely opposite to the generally accepted response from Muslims to the problem of evil. You know what the generally accepted response to this is, or the most popular one? It is, that you are just looking at one attribute of God. God is not just all good; He's also all wise. Therefore, He would do things which are all wise. Well, if Islam's argument is correct, then He should be able to do unwise things as well, things which are not wise,
exactly.
wisdom.
Right.
So Islam's argument goes completely against the popular response that is given by Muslims on this. So, and it's quite dangerous. So I've given you three examples. again, God should be able to send his creation to hell for no reason. Again, it's another way of saying he can be unjust or be, do whatever he wants
Can
to
lie. I mean,
torture,
yeah.
torture people for no reason at all. So I think if this is,
No, let me just say something though, on a bit of a tangent, because I wanted to say on a previous stream where you guys were doing Urdu, and I think I mentioned I wanted to come on, but you guys stayed there for so long and probably got tired and didn't want to entertain any more nonsense from me, perhaps. So, but,
okay.
It was about, because we're close to the topic now. But it's about the what was it? Can God create a stone that he cannot lift, or something like that? And it has
The stream that we did on, is God limited by the laws of logic?
Yeah, exactly. That's and the thing. I think what I was saying to you, I remember typing it. I was trying to say, can God create a stone that is too heavy for him to lift? And obviously, an omnipotent deity would think can do everything, but that's one thing, and he can't do that. But the idea is that the popular defense to that is that it's logically impossible, right? God can't do things that's contradictory to his nature. And if he could create a stone that's too heavy for him to lift, then that wouldn't make sense, because he can't create a stone that's too heavy for him to lift. So, and it's a bit of a paradox, because if you can't do it, then it's a problem. If you can do it, there's a problem, right? It's or maybe not a paradox, but something like it cuts through both ways. But I remember saying to you guys, and I the idea of this, he can't create a stone that he can't lift in and of himself. He's trying. They would try to say that that's a logical contradiction. Like God can't create a square triangle, because it's just impossible. God can't create a married bachelor, because that's just impossible. So you can't. So God can do all possible things, and that is which is in line with his nature. But he can't do things that are impossible. And creating a stone that's too heavy for him to lift is impossible. But I think there's a distinction.
But it's logically impossible, right? But for God, it should be. Why is God bound by logic? Right?
Yeah, absolutely, you're correct. Logically impossible. Every time I said impossible there, I meant in the same sense of logical impossible, not physical impossibility, logical impossibility, and metaphysical impossibility. Because but I do think there's a distinction or a difference between the logical impossibility when it comes to squares and triangles, the logical impossibility of a married bachelor, right? Those are logically impossible, genuine logical impossibilities. And the idea of a stone being too heavy for you to lift, because there's nothing logically impossible inherently about a stone being too heavy to be lifted, right? In the sense that there can be some possibilities where a stone can be too heavy for you to lift. Where, I mean, we can create a stone that's too heavy for us to lift, right? It's just that God can't create a stone that's too heavy for him to lift. So in that sense, there is a distinction. There is a separation between those, right? Where we can actually wait a minute. So let me just say, I'm not a very big defender of any logical problem of God. I think they create interesting issues, but they don't seal the deal for me. Maybe only one or two things maybe are logically impossible that I think God can't do. Let's say the Yusuf dilemma. But they just create interesting issues for philosophical discussion for me. Like, for example, this one, like I said, there's a difference between a stone being too heavy for you and a square triangle. A square triangle seems to be the case that it will be impossible in all possible worlds, whereas a stone being too difficult can be possible in some possible worlds, depending on the entity. So it's impossible for God to create a stone too heavy for him, but it's not impossible for me or Kylie or Philo. So it seems to have this kind of thing that where we can do something God can't do. Right? And here's the other thing. If we do end up limiting God's omnipotence like this due to logical impossibilities, and this is a point that I discovered elsewhere, and it's compelling for some people, not compelling for others. I like to see what you guys think of it. It seems to be that anything can be omnipotent. Anything can be omnipotent, right? So, for example, let's say somebody comes and says, here's a bottle, and it's an omnipotent bottle, right? It gives out infinite amount of wine. It does this, or it has all powerful bottleness, right? Whatever we expect from the drink, omnipotent, a bottle full of drink, let's say wine or something, is infinite supply. It's an omnipotent entity, and it can do all things or something like that, right? And then you go, but can it? All right. So in its bottleness, it can do all of these things. But can it, for example, turn into a crocodile, or can it, for example, feed the poor, or can it like become Superman? No. That's contrary to its nature. It's logically impossible for the bottle, right? Because it has to be inherent to its nature, right? Depending on how you define the nature and just add the word omnipotent to it, right? You already kind of, turn anything omnipotent this way. In this sense, even a bottle can be omnipotent despite its finite powers, right?
Totally with you on that. But then that's why some of the more thinking theists have then changed the definition to, instead of omnipotent, they'll say maximally, right? Maximally.
Exactly, yeah. So
And
this is why I said
then,
I'm not completely on board with this. I thought it'll just create any kind of thought,
but then you can't run the same maximal argument with a maximally potent bottle of water, right? I think that'll probably, in that sense, then the bottle doesn't adhere to that same kind of maximal being, right? Then there is an asymmetry over there in that sense. In your earlier argument, definitionally, I think I do agree with that.
Yeah, you can say a lot of things to that. I mean, you can also say, for example, this even if there's an omnipotent bottle or a maximally powerful bottle, a maximally powerful God is closer to real, is stronger or something, in the sense that, fine, you can think of maximally powerful bottles and maximally powerful cars and define things like that, but it's still constrained more than a person would be, whereas a maximally powerful person can do more things and actualize more things, and therefore so it creates interest. This is why I said these things create interesting issues to think about. So a maximally powerful person is more closer to real omnipotence than a maximally powerful bottle, because a bottle is constrained by the bottle's limitations, whereas the person is constrained by the person's limitations, which is more than the bottle. Persons can create bottles, right? Bottles can't do things that just go beyond its bottleness.
Maybe. I think come to think of it, maybe this argument runs with maximally as well. I guess it runs with totally. All right, Callie, what do you think? What do you think about this? I think maybe it makes sense. Just a nice thought to have, I guess.
I think it makes sense if am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to grasp what Mahadan is actually saying. I might have missed something or missed the essence of what he's saying, but I think if people define God, or limit God, is limited because of a certain way people define him, right? Or humans define God in a certain way, and that is what limits God in a few ways. Because people or humans or Muslims or theists define God's attributes in a certain way, which means that God cannot act or do certain things because of the very way that these people define God. Which means, and I think if this is what Mahadan is saying, that if it would have been a kind of entity which is not bound by these specific definitions, then he should be able to do, he should be actually more powerful, or maybe closer to that omnipotent status than the kind of God that these people believe in. So if this is what Mahadan is saying, then I think this makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not directly saying that, but that is a sentiment that you can derive from that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That is definitely a sentiment that you can derive, because what I'm trying to say is that by adding the attribute of omnipotence and then combining it with other things will always constrain its possibilities, right? So if you add omnipotence with evil, then you have an all-powerful evil, And if then people stupidly want to say that it can do everything, well, it can't, clearly, right? It's all powerful to the extent that it can be evil.
Yeah.
It can't be good.
Yeah.
So it's not real omnipotence, and that might not even be possible to have that real omnipotence. It can only be
Right.
maximum. And but then think about it this way. So all right, so now you've got this powerful, very all powerful good thing, right? And you want to line it with his nature. You can keep adding more. So keeping the all powerful constant, right? You can keep adding more things. It's good. It's also this. And so keeping the all powerful constant, how many other attributes can you add? And you can still continue to say it's all powerful in its nature, right? To the point where you can start removing everything that you know about God and just keep stable the all powerful nature and reduce God's nature to a bottle, and it'll still be all powerful.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You know what? I was once listening to this Abdur Rahman, someone who used to be.
Kylie, before you go, let me just finish the thought, because you can reduce it to a bottle. Yeah, and this parody is to showcase that you can still retain the concept of all powerfulness and feel happy about it by just simply saying, whenever somebody goes, but the bottle can't do this, but the bottle can't do that, and goes, of course, that's a logical contradiction. It's logically impossible for a bottle to do things beyond its bottleness, right? Can you see? In the end, adding so many characteristics, whilst keeping the all-powerful constant, you can never find anything that that entity cannot do, because everything that it cannot do is logically impossible. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I think exactly.
And I think that's where, okay. So I think what I draw sort of inferred from your point was a very limited aspect of it, but what you're saying, and I think you started from that point, which is, if this is how you do it, then everything is omnipotent.
Exactly.
I think you started, right?
Exactly.
Because everything is, because anything that they cannot do is logically impossible for them to do. Because that is what you're saying. You have defining that being, let's say I cannot do something, because we know, I mean, let's say I cannot logically do something. So now if you say that, and then I still claim that I'm omnipotent, and you say, well, you cannot do that, and I would say yes, because that is logically impossible for me to do. Therefore, I would remain omnipotent despite the fact that I cannot do this logically impossible thing.
So yeah, by the way, I'm not saying this is like a strong argument without any objection.
It's not, but yeah, I think it's not a strong argument. It's a yeah. I mean, it's a kind of what do you call? In engineers' word, I would say a pakki argument.
It's a pakki argument.
It's a parody.
Okay,
parody argument. Yeah.
Where their train derails for me is as soon as when they have been pointed to, the problem with the omni, right? And somebody starts saying them, no, but this is going to limit your God, right? And this is a limiting thing, right? And this no, it's maximally, right? It's maximally to just resolve it. But they don't understand the maximal word itself brings in the state of limitness. You understand? Maximally is not, it limits. When you say somebody is maximally, he's limited by something, right? And that's inherently, they just use it, and everybody just doesn't realize that maximally, is itself a limiting factor. And the problem
I am as maximally powerful as I can be. Right?
Yeah, but exactly.
The thing is, here's the objection that I would raise to my own arguments here. There is a difference between my maximum and God's maximum. God would be the optimum maximum, right? So I am maximally powerful in accordance to my nature, and whatever those limits are. But I'm not actually the maximal powerful, the most maximal powerful. So this is where the ontological argument comes in. If you have to do the highest conceivable,
conceivable.
Yeah, exactly. So So this is how they can defeat the bottle example that I'm talking about. Because although the bottle can be, in some sense, somebody can defend the bottle's all-powerful nature by making these quips, saying, "Well, it's just every time you point out a limit of the bottle, I can just say it's logically impossible." There's a difference between the bottle and the right. So there is
and to that, I think that is where my earlier point will come in. I think that to that I will respond, okay, but then your concept of God is less powerful than my concept of God. That I'm hypothetically putting forward. That is, who's not all wise, who's not all good, because he can do all the, who can do actually everything
Yeah,
possible. He
exactly. I
can
think
do evil
your
things. He
God
can
is
do lie.
limited by,
He can be unjust. He can do all these
Yeah.
things.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
so then I would say to that person that, okay, your concept of God is then more less powerful than my
Or it can
hypothetical
switch its
concept of God.
nature. You can even switch its nature. It can become all powerful and all good for a
Exactly.
bit. And
Yeah.
well, I'm not
Yeah,
sure it can
can
switch.
become the
It
all
will be. It will
malevolent
not be
and
called
whatever.
switching, but it will be in
Yeah,
his nature to do things which seems, which would come under good, which to do
yeah,
things, but to do benevolent things, to do evil things, to
yeah,
do sort of malicious things. All of these things will be
yeah.
in his power, and he will actually be able to do all of these things. So I think, yeah,
Yeah.
he is more powerful. He's actually closer to omnipotence
No,
than
no, I'll add
your
another thing.
concept of God.
I'll make this even more powerful. Everything that you said is most. I agree is more powerful if you just taking powerful as a measurement than the theistic versions of God. I'll even add to that to make it even more powerful. Right? He can kill himself. Yeah,
Okay,
he can
yeah.
destroy himself. That would make him
Yeah.
even more powerful, right? And so some people may say to that. Some people may say to that, but that's that would be logically contradictory. Not if you just.
That's a
This is what I'm saying.
contradiction.
You can just keep defining things as nature to say no, killing himself won't be logically impossible if you define God as a being that is absolute to the extent of his desires or something like that. You can play with it, right? You can say he can do it. No, he is timeless. He is unkillable.
I mean,
But he,
you can
yeah,
define a God who doesn't exist and yet governs the universe, whatever, right? That's seems absurd, but that's in his nature, right? That's in his nature. When he
I
doesn't,
think you go too far. You know, you said,
no,
no,
I
this.
think you can define it, right? It seems logically contradictory to you, but that's the nature, right? That's how you define it, pretty much, right?
You're saying God is a non-existent thing that can control everything.
Yeah, that can control everything, right?
Okay.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one because I do think that would probably
No,
be.
when you talk about the killing of himself, right? Because when you
Yeah.
kill it, it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And yet it's in its
His
nature
power
that it can
ends.
still control. Yeah, so just to justify that thought process,
Maybe,
by the
yeah,
way,
yeah. But what I'm
that
saying.
quickly goes into.
You
So
know
it's
what?
just
Yeah.
sorry, so
Go ahead.
just as a separate point though, I actually don't think if God had like a veto to kill himself would reduce his powerfulness. It will add to his because he can do all of the things that he could already do that theists believe plus one, which is kill himself as well, right? Whether he exercises or not is irrelevant, right? But the fact that he has that power and the ability to do so would add to his host of characteristics. Now, they may say it would be logically impossible for a God to do that because God, by definition, is absolute and indestructible or something, right? But remember, we're trying to create an omnipotent being closer to or closest to the peaks of omnipotence as we can, and I think it will be actually more omnipotent if we just defined into it will be formally a logical contradiction if you define it as unkillable and then add the ability to kill. But you don't need to start off like that. You can start off with, in order to avoid the formal problem, to say that it's unkillable by anything or anybody else apart from himself. So now you have two. Let's take two gods side by side. A God that is undestroyable, unkillable, including himself, versus a God that is unkillable, undestructible, but allowable, but he can kill himself. He can commit suicide. Which one is closer to omnipotence? Right? I would say the latter, right? It's got one
Yeah.
more attribute. So
Right.
what?
I think we have gone way too deep into this.
Yeah.
Let's get back on the surface. We have
I'll
gone to the
just
Mariana Trench, by the way.
I'll just say one more thing. I'll just say one more thing because I mean, a while back I was thinking about different arguments and about the concept of God, and I thought, you know what, it's a bit, maybe it seemed a bit sad to be God because of this very thing. Because, and I actually wrote this down in my notes. I said, God is
Yeah.
doomed to exist eternally,
Yeah, I think we discussed this somewhere.
purposelessly,
Yes,
right? Because he
exactly.
cannot have any purpose because he
I
is
mean,
a
even if he
self-actualized being.
wanted to,
So
cease
he
to
is
exist, he
doomed.
just can't
Yeah.
do it.
So he's doomed to live forever. He
Right.
cannot end himself. Have you guys seen The Good Place?
No.
The series Good Place.
No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
good series.
that's a really. But then
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
could be arguments against it because he doesn't have that kind of a feeling of
Feeling and all of that. I understand that.
jadedness and all those
Yeah,
things, right?
I understand that,
Jadedness,
but I was just thinking, just trying to imagine.
No,
But I understand
totally.
that it's not an
I see.
argument.
I think we have talked
Yeah.
about it earlier as well, right? Yeah, totally.
And I wrote, I wrote it down because I said, okay, God is just eternally living. Why wouldn't he try evil once at least, or from
But
time to
I
time?
do agree,
I
Kali,
think,
with
yeah.
your
But
point.
yeah, I was saying, yeah.
I do agree with your point about purposelessness, right? And that's
Yeah,
one
yeah.
very
We have
strong
talked about it
argument,
already.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That maybe I mean, if the
But
definitions are
we
right, then
cannot.
he is
Yeah.
purposeless for
And
sure.
we cannot. But let's not go into that a bit. Martin, we're getting feedback now. I don't know. We weren't getting that earlier, but now we're getting it. Yeah, but yeah, Martin, Philo was saying that yeah, we can, but we shouldn't get into that right now. I think let's
Yeah, I think that's too
let's get back
it's
to that.
we're gonna get
Yeah,
too far away from the discussion.
we've
Right?
already gotten too far away, but yeah, let's go back.
Yeah. Okay, shall we? Martin, you there? Martin, can't hear you. We may need to drop out and come back in. I think we were getting feedback as well from your side. Okay.
Yeah, I think let's continue with the video. And okay, so there are two Mahadins now.
So every time I leave this screen to look at something else, I get kicked out. So I'm not having internet issues. Just
You have logged in from your phone. You've logged in from your phone, right?
Yeah,
okay, yeah, that would be a problem for that. Yeah.
But what were you saying? Sorry, just summarize it in 5 seconds.
Yeah, what I said was actually a 5-second statement. I said God is. I was thinking about God and how what it would be like to be God, and I thought once that God is doomed to live eternally, and even if he wants to end himself, he cannot. I mean, just thinking about the concept of God that they have, but yeah, so that's kind of maybe if God thinks about ending himself, he'll never be able to do that.
I mean, isn't it true for you as well when you are in heaven? Pretty much, right? I mean,
Yeah, you could say that.
You're doomed to live forever. Basically, that's the same thing.
That's why I was referring to the good place. I don't want to spoil it, so because people might be listening. So
yeah.
let me not spoil it, but it has something to do with this.
Right.
It's a good series, by the way. You should watch it. If it's a good series.
I think if God existed, I mean, if we don't have an issue, if theists don't have an issue with a perfect, self-satisfied, content, self-sufficient, doesn't need anything, isn't dependent upon anything, God, to want to create human beings and Satan and everything, then is it too much of a far cry to think it might want to kill itself? Yeah, I don't think it is. It's not. I mean, the absurdity.
Yeah.
So this is why I like the logical problem. I don't think it necessarily reveals anything concrete. I genuinely think that it creates confounding problems for theists, because if I start saying it creates linguistic and in the discourse issues, problematic issues, right? Because even like that bottle example, in and of itself, it doesn't do anything because I can object to it as we did, right? But it opens the doors for other things, like this God can commit suicide thing. They could easily come along and say, but God will never want to, because or something like that. But then that creates another issue for them, because they're willing to accept something that is difficult to accept for many atheists, which is that God would actually want to create an imperfect world, right? And if they accept that, then I don't see any further issue to think that God would want to commit suicide. If the suicidal ability was defined into his nature.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
I think we should move on now, right? Because we have gone way too far, way too deep.
Philo, we can't see the video if you started playing it.
Yes, sorry, that always happens whenever I remove it. So the idea behind removing it is so that YouTube doesn't strike it out. Hey, you are running too much of this, right? I think they have a limit somehow. Anyways, let's get back onto it.
Should be limited to angels. So actually, there's already a logical problem baked into proposing that this is a syllogism in the first place. Furthermore, this is not Jannah, right? You understand the term Jannah, right? You're Moroccan. So the whole thing, why? So essentially saying if a good or powerful God exists, there should not be any process or any blip or any point in between in which there is anything that happens that no one likes. Well, that again is just a severe, completely unnecessary limitation, because once we're in Jannah, we'll look back and say, yeah, that was totally justified, totally worth it. There's great, deep wisdom in that. That makes perfect sense, which is completely consistent with a good, knowledgeable, just, all-powerful God. So the idea that these wonderful names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala somehow then imply that this dunya shouldn't exist is completely non sequitur.
I wanted to respond to your paradise.
So I think he has got it so horribly wrong over here, and I'll tell you why. Lazy has joined. Hey, Lazy. So why he has got it horribly wrong over here? He says, all good God can't create it because this is not this dunya. He's talking about heaven. You'll everything will be settled. All the evils that you see will be all settled. But this is not correct. According to his own theology, there'll be a hell where people will be, getting tortured for eternity. And that's exactly the problem. That's, in my book at least, I don't know if in Hakim's book that's unnecessary torturing, unnecessary evil or not. I think that's unnecessary evil. I mean, I'm not even bringing, the unnecessary evil of, part of the animal suffering. I'm bringing straight something that's going to happen forever, right? So that thing can't point to a good God. I mean, if your understanding of good God is who's merciful and all those things, I think that doesn't make sense to me, right? I mean, somebody suffering for eternity is just, at least beyond my understanding. Do you guys have anything to add on to it, or shall we just move on?
No,
do you not find the problem with this thing? I think I see it's like he's saying everything will be, just settle down once you are in heaven. I don't think so. He probably hasn't thought through it completely, that there's other half of heaven as well.
Yeah. I mean, so the J.L. Mackie popular version of the logical problem of evil, the J.L. Mackie one. It's God has these attributes. These attributes contradict the data, which is there's evil. God would be the type of being, this sort of God, all powerful and all good, right? He has all the power to do everything, and that's possible, and he's all good. He would want to eradicate all forms of evil, right? So the idea is, like a square triangle can't exist, God's attributes and the world can't exist. It's a very strong problem in the sense that it makes it impossible for a God to exist, right? Now, the counter arguments against this is usually in the form of just showing that it's logically possible. They don't need to actually demonstrate it exists, the solution to the problem. They just need to show it's logically possible to defeat the logical problem of evil. That's kind of how it kind of works. So if you think of a logical possible scenario where it can in fact be the case that with all these attributes, good and good, all powerful and all goodness, that there can in fact be some form of evil. And how? What's the just, you think of one conceivable justification, then you've defeated the logical problem of evil. right? So I think Hakim might be trying to say like there's one possible way, which is there's a hell, sorry, there's a heaven, and that will make it, you know, justified because of some. It doesn't express how, but people would think that this is some great thing or something, right? So it's again like the square and triangle. Like I just showed there's a square and there's a triangle. They can't fit together, right? And he's trying to come up with an objection to that. So actually, it is possible. Here's one possibility, right? So I think that's what he's trying to do, right? He's trying to show one possibility is that heaven. I'm not sure exactly what he wants to say, but heaven will make people happy, and therefore that evil that's happening in this world is justified. Excuse me again, right? I think that's what he's trying to say, but that I wouldn't, you know, that's a logical possibility. But I think where problems go, where it goes all our is when you think about the concept again, back to the concept of an all-powerful and all good God. Would such a being do that, right? Because if you're all-powerful and all good, you would you can just send them straight to heaven. Remember, he won't allow for any evil. Not everybody accepts that. So many theists think that they think that the idea of an all good, perfectly good God will never allow evil is just absurd. It depends where you start from. I think it's not.
I think, and I'll put it in this way. I think this is J.L. Schellenberg's argument, I guess, right? And maybe I'm misunderstood his argument, but if you consider prior purity, right, and in terms of goodness of God, right, then that prior purity wouldn't allow a God to even think about an evil, right?
Yeah.
Or it won't allow any evil at all, basically.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is a contradiction, in my opinion. I think that should be taken into account instead of.
That's right. No, that's right. So I think J.L. Mackey's version of the problem of evil is actually weaker, and J.L. Schellenberg's version is stronger. Although the former is more popular, and the latter is not as popular. But that's it. Even Graham Oppy goes to describe the best version of the problem of evil is he just can't see a perfect being create an imperfect thing. Simple as that. Forget the data of the world, forget everything. We don't need to go into the particulars. We don't need to go to anything. Just the idea that there's imperfection with that he thinks, and he is very good that he simplifies it to this. So there's no further conversation. We're just thinking about would imperfection come out of perfection?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it would. Why, and
exactly, and I think. Yeah, and I think their objection, and I think Hakim's objection would be, well, then God should not be able to create anything. Yes, a perfect being should not create anything, because he should say anything that I create will be less perfect than me, and I should not allow any sort of imperfection. What is the problem with that?
Exactly, I totally agree with
that. The problem
that.
is allowing imperfection. A perfect being should not allow any sort of imperfection, even for a moment.
And I think we did discuss this, Callie, in one of the streams. Anytime a perfect being tries to create anything, either he's cloning himself or, I think, and which he can't have because he's only one. He can't have something similar to him with all the perfections that he has, or he or she or whatever. And in that case, he just shouldn't be able to create anything because he won't create anything imperfect, and he can't create himself because, he can't create two perfections, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So I think that something we discussed earlier in probably one of the streams. Anyway, I think shall we move on, or anybody wants to add something?
No.
So if suffering is only justified.
Sorry.
No, nothing. I was going to say, absolutely. Like a perfect being shouldn't change. A perfect being shouldn't need to improve. A perfect being doesn't have any needs. It doesn't have any unmet desires. It doesn't, it won't want to create anything imperfect at the very minimum. And the world would be something that is imperfect. So you can add any amount of heaven, any amount of suffering. In my opinion, you can't even have a tiny prick on your finger, because that will be imperfect. If God created a world where there's only one human being feeling a bit cold, that would be evil enough to think, all right, a perfect being doesn't exist, because God, forget even one human being feeling a bit cold. If God just wanted to create, like Kylie said, the mere fact that it wants to create suggests that he wasn't perfect, because he's now having to change to achieve something that
there is a want, basically, right? And then that want itself defeats the purpose of being perfect, right? I think, yeah. I mean, it's a very rock solid argument, right?
That's right.
All right, let's move on.
Exist is completely non sequitur.
I wanted to respond to your paradise rebuttal, but yeah. So if suffering is only justified in hindsight after paradise, doesn't that mean it's not truly necessary good in itself, just something we like have to rationalize later?
No, it's part of the process of being created. We're still in the process of reaching our final form and destination. We're still in the process stage of being created. And so saying saying why not create something that goes through suffering, and obviously therefore there has to be something that causes the suffering. We say why not create that? It's equivalent to saying why not create these things within which suffering is part of the process of creating them. You can't ask for a triangle that has no sides.
Okay.
You can't ask for a circle that has no center.
But isn't it possible to imagine a world where growth and development happen without innocent suffering? Just like you can have sheep.
Oh yeah, sure. And we
right?
and that already existed, but that was just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the angels. There was no humans.
I'm just trying to understand. If you think that suffering is bad and shouldn't be part of this world, is that what you're trying to imply?
Sorry.
But do these guys just miss the point? Like, they're admitting. So why do they feel so self-assured about what they're saying? Like, I just don't get it. Like, would you feel they feel so self-assured about something that is just hitting them in the face, the obviousness, right? So Islam Hakim says that you can't have definitionally you can't have human beings without suffering. That's because, well, of course, because if we define a human being as we are, and then by definition you're not going to have human beings without suffering. But philosophically, there's nothing wrong with. Is it essentially the case that human beings couldn't be not suffering? I mean, you have the example of the heaven that they just mentioned, right? Are you not human in those areas? Do you stop being biologically a human, or what? So this is getting into classification problems that we need not have, really, right?
Yeah, I think it's when it suits them, they'll say no, it's just the souls. But then the souls, when they talk about that humans here, no, there'll be souls in the heaven, right? And then when you're talking about what humans as in flesh and body with the souls here, and as soon as they get into a problem, but how do you define a me? Basically, the identity is the soul, basically, right? And then just tangle up all these things.
Yeah,
so that's what he's trying to do.
Let me surprise them if they do go down that route of souls, because a lot of philosophy do believe that essentially we're not our bodies, but we are our consciousness, right? As a person, like if two people smashed into each other and their personality swapped, let's say me and you, Philo, like bumped into each other, and I'm in your body and you're in my body. I wouldn't suddenly become Philo and you wouldn't suddenly become Nadeem, right? Or something like that. You would still be you. You just transported, right? You will have a different body, but you will be Philo, right? So by doing such a thing, we're not having a body swap, really. Well, yeah, we're having a body swap, but we're not having a mind swap, right? I'm not suddenly becoming Philo, and you're not suddenly becoming Nadeem. You're entering my body or something like that, and I'm entering yours. Sounds gross, but what this thought experiment shows in philosophy, in the domain of personal identity, is that we are essentially our personal identities, our consciousness, our thoughts and dreams and ambitions and aspirations, our personalities, right? This sounds more plausible, because if our bodies deteriorate or change or get old, or we lose limbs, or we go through a severe accident and we're deformed and mutilated, but yet we still our consciousness is intact, we would still say that's Nadeem, we will still say that's Philo, despite our body changing. So the thought experiment shows what's the essential nature of who we are. Is it our body? No, it's not our bodies. It's mainly our consciousness. And if they want to go down the route of saying that souls, well, yeah. So clearly, then, essentially, humans might be human beings, human organisms might require suffering, but do souls and consciousness require suffering? Essentially, and if there can be a heaven where you don't undergo that suffering, then it seems as though, and you retain yourself, like Nadeem can go to heaven and there won't be any suffering, then clearly it's logically possible that you can be yourself essentially. You can be Nadeem and there's no suffering. So it's not the case, as Islam Hakim says, that it's like it's like trying to add angles to a circle or something. It's not. It's very possible that you can have yourself not suffering. Logically, yeah.
Right, totally. All right, Kelly, you want to add something, or shall we move on?
No, I think we can move on.
What? I didn't hear you.
Do you think suffering should not be part of this world?
No, I'm saying that if suffering
shouldn't be.
There was no human, and we already, and that already existed. But
just rewind it a little bit so that we hear the complete argument from Hashim.
That was just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the angels. There was no humans.
I'm just trying to understand. If you think that suffering is bad and shouldn't be part of this world, is that what you're trying to imply?
Sorry, what? I didn't hear you.
Do you think suffering should not be part of this world?
No, I'm saying that if suffering is truly unnecessary for growth, then including it in creation seems incompatible with a perfectly good and loving God, right?
But this is what I was saying. So think about because again, we're talking on a logical rather than emotional level. The point is, all these things that can do all these things without the suffering, we have, it's the angels already. They just hear, obey, and do, right? And so, they're one type of creation. But us as human beings, it's obviously connected with free will and a bunch of stuff. Now, be very careful with the questions you ask, because if you ask a question that by its very nature could not be rationally completely answered, you will never get a satisfactory answer, right? So your question of why did Allah make us, right, that's essentially what it's asking for, because in order for us to be made, the process of making this thing, the human being, involves, as we know, with every human being that's gone some kind of suffering. This is part of the process of making a human. So if you want to ask why did Allah choose to make humans in the first place? Well, that's obviously a very deep, very broad question. There's a lot of very good answers, but nobody will have the full comprehensive answer, because none of us are going to be alive long enough to even say it or hear it, let alone debate about it, because the number of reasons are beyond our comprehension. But so why are you asking that in the first place? And how can that even relate to a logical argument? Because there's no logical problem with creating something where suffering is part of the process of existing. And he had already previously created all the things for which that's not the case. So you're kind of demanding that either he is more limited than he really is, or that you're saying, well, there shouldn't even be any suffering anywhere in the process for anything, which is basically you, from a limited standpoint, judging the one who actually knows and knows how we'll feel about it once the outcome is done.
I'm sorry, but you're asking a lot of questions, so we have to go slowly.
So, okay, sorry.
You're saying why I'm asking this. I'm asking because the reason for creating humans with suffering are beyond comprehension. Didn't start to see how we can logically claim is consistent with a perfectly good and powerful God, right? And also, I wanted to say something. If God is truly all powerful, couldn't he have created humans with free will and growth, but without the need for suffering? Can he do that?
This question is exactly what I said. When you say, couldn't he have created humans with free will, but without there being suffering? That is exactly like asking to create a circle with no center, or a triangle.
All right, I'm still trying to understand, why does he say that God couldn't create such a being? Does it really logically follow that God can't create a being without there being any suffering with free will? What tool is he using? What tool is he using?
He already said that was the case, and he can. So
Yeah.
he's already defeated himself. I don't know what everything else is that he's saying is waffle.
Yeah,
He's waffle.
it's a waffle pretty much, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And
I don't know.
you know what? And I think we, Philo, I think we touched this in our Urdu stream as well. I think it was the last stream. If suffering is necessary for growth of a human being, let's say, because he agrees that growth is possible, it's because he seemed to imply that even angels in the when only angels existed, there was some sort of growth without suffering. But he's saying humans are the very beings by definition, according to him, which are created to grow with suffering. So and with free will, of course. So I think then the question would arise, okay, so then what you're saying is then that for growth suffering is necessary. Now then the question, let's grant him that, and then if we go with that, and then we'll ask, okay, so are you saying that how much suffering is necessary for growth? Because if you're saying suffering is directly proportional to growth, then we should be trying to maximize suffering, or
Yeah,
at least
and then those
or
in
at least
heaven will be the maximally beneficial
exactly,
for of this
exactly, because
process.
that will be, that will give rise to most amount of growth. And
Yeah,
though that would imply that, okay, and if at least you're not trying to cause half suffering, then you should not interfere with anyone else's suffering, because that is part of their growth. Why are you interfering with it? So if that is the case, then why do you do this? Why do you interfere
Yeah,
with anyone's growth
I
by
think yeah,
interfering with their suffering?
yeah. So so I think so. Yeah. So I think Hakim is just waffling, doing a lot of waffle. He kind of mixed in
Yeah,
there skeptical theism as well, right? A little bit. So when it was getting hard, when it was finding it difficult to
yeah,
really explain it, he just wanted beyond our comprehensions points, beyond our
whatever.
comprehension. And I hope he extends the same privilege when it comes to other things that he considers logically impossible, right? Which he doesn't. So I'm pretty sure he's going to say something like, if I say something came from nothing, and then I go, maybe it's, he goes to me, that's logically impossible. I'm saying, how do you know? Maybe it's beyond your comprehension. Well, he's not going to accept it there. And if I say something like an infinite regress exists, and he'll say that's logically impossible, and I say, how would you know? Maybe it's beyond your comprehension how a infinite regress can exist. He won't accept it there either. But when it comes to God, when he tries to reconcile all this, it becomes all this mystery, right? Oh, these things we don't know is beyond our comprehension. We're going to find
exactly.
out when we die, and all this stuff. And it just becomes, so it's just highly inconsistent, I think. So that's the first thing. The other thing I'd say is what Kylie was saying. So I've got issues with this. I'm kind of agnostic on the point. So I'm not 100% sure, but I can think of objections as to what theists could say, and some theists do say, to the idea that therefore we should go and maximize the suffering or something like that. Or if evil events become something greater for the greater good, then we shouldn't interrupt or intervene in evil. So a child is there drowning. We should look at it and go, oh, this is great, right? Because it's going to turn into something
Yeah,
really good for him.
No,
Or good for
I think what Callie is saying, and I do agree to it, and I think we did discuss this in great length as well in last stream, in the Urdu stream. At what point do you realize and say that I should intervene, or think that there are two different ways to think of it. One is the soul building, or whatever building is happening of that person, which is required probably for heaven or wherever that person is gonna go. And the other problem is, what is at what point you intervene and realize that this is not God's plan, this is against God's plan. Which one is God's plan, right? Basically, which way should you choose, which is according to the God's
Yeah.
plan? If you go and save a drowning child, is you gonna intervene in God's plan, or if you just walk away from just walk past it, and that's God's plan, basically? Which one is it?
Right. So let me entertain an objection to that, though, that they can possibly say. And I'm again, like I said, I'm not firmly convinced either way on this one for these reasons, because I can think of ways around that. Like one example might be that it's part of. So the idea is that you may be interrupting God's plan, or you might make something that is actually good for him worse, or something, or something like that. Or we should celebrate the fact that
yeah.
a baby is somebody drowning. And
Not
but the thing
actually,
is,
but yeah. Hypothetically, yes.
Hypothetically, yeah. I'm not saying that you should do that. I mean, yeah. But well, maybe theists should do that. I think I challenge them if they want to be consistent.
that's gonna be evil.
But I think you can possibly think of certain things. I'm not sure how they are. I have thought about things.
Yeah.
For example, it could be the case that if you limit it to just what you guys said, then yeah, it sounds like that. But you got to look at the broader picture. God isn't merely saying, these theodicies are not merely resting in isolation. They have to look at it in conjunction with the entire theological framework. And one of them is that you also have to stop evil, perceived evil, right? It could very well be part of the goodness of. So basically, all of this evil in the world, the entire world, is going to amount to something better, whether it's soul building or whether it's heaven or whether it's something in the next 10 years. Or even something like that is going to amount to something better. But that doesn't mean when we see a child drowning we should congratulate or be happy or gleeful or just let it happen, right? Because part of the mission of all of this that we also may add to is that we have to also go there and try and stop it, right? And that is part of the utilitarian calculus as well, to increase net happiness. Right? If you think about it like that, then it the problems that you're raising might fade away a little bit or get weakened. So, for example, the child is suffering. It would be wrong to go, oh, well, this is going to obviously lead to a good end. Well, you don't know the extent of the good end. It could very well be that you're helping and interrupting or intervening is going to lead to that good end. Right? It's part of it, right? Mm-hmm. And without, and then you may say, how do we know this though? Because God commands it to you. So it's part of the theological framework, which is that whilst these things may lead to good ends, you are a part of this event entirely as well, right?
Then the primary premise here is the suffering is gonna build you, and that's the premise that we are going with here, Martin.
Sorry,
right?
Again.
So the fundamental premise in starting this thought between when Callie and I discussed it is that suffering is good, right? Basically, suffering is required, right? And there is no cap to it. There is no limit to it, right? There is no discussion of a limit. The more why is suffering required? Because it builds your character, right? And so where is that limit? How do you define where it has to max out?
I'm not sure that's how you should be thinking about it. I'm not sure thinking about suffering in itself is a good thing. I think it's the idea that.
But
what I'm trying to say is that, for example, let me talking about it too abstract makes it difficult. So it could very well be the fact that the child drowns for a bit and doesn't die, and that builds his soul, right? So it's not the case that total suffering will build a soul, right? Because if he totally suffered, he wouldn't build his soul. For example, or maybe the child needs to drown and then die. 2 children have to die in order to. It has some sort of butterfly effect into the future. But the 2 children have to die, not 3 children, not 4 children. Can you see? So it's not the case that unlimited, uncapped suffering is always going to lead to a good death. In some circumstances, so it depends. It's like a utilitarian thing. In some situations, some forms of suffering is going to lead to a net happiness of this value, and you need X amount of suffering for Y happiness or something. Right? Whatever that X is, you may not know what it is because that is predetermined by God or something like that, and you're part of that process. But you're part of that predetermined.
No, but you each and every individual's. Sorry, Callie, you want to go first? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, but then I understand what you're trying to say. But let me give you another way of looking at it. Then, let me give you another way to look at it. I understand what you're trying to say, but let's say something horrible is happening to a child, and a person stands there. You're aware that, let's say, you come to know that yesterday something horrible was happening to a child in front of a person A, and he didn't do anything, right? He didn't do anything. He allowed that to happen.
Yeah. In hindsight, it makes more
sense. Yes, exactly. Now, in hindsight, you should always say that was good.
I agree. I've had this. Yeah.
Right. So that I think, even if, and I agree what you're trying to say, but then in hindsight, you should always say that whatever happened, no matter how horrible it was, It was very
It
good.
was always good. Definitely.
It was
Yeah.
very good. What
That's
happened?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's correct. I think that seems more solid, because I think prospectively it's difficult to,
Hmm.
to, to say that, which you
And
then don't do anything.
yeah,
I think you can object to that in the way I have.
and also
Likewise.
then you
Yeah.
should not be criticizing that person A who's standing there in a
Exactly.
way,
Yeah.
because you would say that, actually, because it
Mm.
didn't happen, that means that actually what happened was good, and therefore in actuality he didn't do anything wrong by not
Let me
interfering. But
possibly,
yes,
let
he
me
should
possibly add. Let me
he
possibly
could
add
have.
an objection to
Yes.
this, though. Yeah,
Good. Okay.
it could very well be that that sort of attitude leads to that net unhappiness. Sorry, that sort of attitude doesn't maximize the goodness. So yeah, so
But
for a
that cannot
moment,
be the case. The
yeah,
overall the overall
No, but
scheme of things
Martin,
can never be
I think
impacted, right?
Martin, I think there is probably, I'm not understanding it properly. I think
yeah.
this case that at least I am talking about, I don't know if Kelly is talking about the same or not. I think this maximization of soul building or whatever building you're talking about, this is a very individualistic process here. This is not in some
It's not the soul
utilitarian
building, though. It's
sense.
And
It,
I
it
think
doesn't
I
have
think
to
yeah,
intersect
yeah.
with that utilitarian
I think
perspective, because
yeah, what Philo is trying to say, and I think that is slightly different. And what when I was explaining my point, I think it was a part of it. So the point that Philo is trying to emphasize is this: if suffering is part of soul building and it is necessary, then the question is, how much suffering is suffering then directly proportional to the to your growth? And if so, then let's say, how much of suffering do you need? Because let's say if you say that, okay, if you the more you suffer, the more growth you will actually be able to achieve. Then what that means is that if you see people, let's say, who suffer very little, for example, let's say, and I think I and Philo discussed a
Yeah,
scenario.
I
A
think people
child
would
who
object.
dies,
I think
a child who dies,
yeah.
no, no, yeah, yeah, a child who dies, let's say, immediately after birth,
Mm.
right? And almost painlessly, let's say. But let's say a very tiny amount of, if there was any sort of pain, then very little, let's say, because there are scenarios where we are aware of where it happens, right? Now, thus that is that child able to achieve that growth or not? Now, this is a purely theistic kind of a question from within their framework, an internal critique sort of, where
Mm.
if they say that this grows as suffering is necessary for growth, then why didn't God allow these souls to suffer, or
Mm.
give them a chance to suffer a bit more so that they could grow more?
Mm. So I would say to that because if you look at it, if you look at it in isolation, just as soul building theories, but the theists
Sorry,
don't
sorry.
say.
And just to complete my
Yeah.
point, so and if so if the audience can, because you understand the implication, but just to sort of explicitly mention it, which means that if this can happen to child, and a child can suffer minimal pain and end up in heaven, meaning that whatever ultimately, when they say that the suffering is necessary for growth, ultimately they want to achieve heaven, right? Whatever, indirectly, growth means achieving heaven. That's what I would say their worldview is. Now, if that is the case, that a child can achieve heaven or growth with minimal pain, then why cause any more pain to anyone else, or suffering? So I think, sort of, I just wanted to make it more explicit. But yeah, Madhan, go ahead.
Well, what I would say, that if you look at it in isolation, because but no, I don't think any theist is saying that the entire purpose of suffering is to soul build. It's to soul build. It's to avoid other problems. It's to create other new good forms of goodness in the future. It's like the butterfly effect, like William Lane Craig
no, but
says.
this is Martin. This is a very
Yeah,
individualistic process. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not
yeah.
a utilitarian process. I
From
mean,
that,
I don't see
Madhan,
this. Yeah, I don't see this as a
yeah,
utilitarian process in any sense. I
exactly.
mean, I don't see it.
You see, from the theistic point of view, every person is an individual, and as an individual, he's dealt with individually. Now, he is part of this society, but ultimately he is alone in his test. From a theistic point of view, in his test, in his existence, in whatever will happen to him. or whatever, wherever he end up. So that is a very individualistic process. I agree with
Yeah,
Philo,
that's
what he's
that's what
saying.
at least, yeah,
So,
that's what I
so,
think.
or when you say that something good and overall goodness and all of that, ultimately, whatever that means, it translates to this: a person goes to hell or heaven because of what he does, and this is what growth means. So according to their view, a person chooses to grow or not, right? If he chooses to grow, then he ends up in heaven. I'm using a very sort of the words that were used uh, in this stream. So the person, if a person chooses to grow, then he'll end up in heaven, and the process for growth involves suffering. And if he does not choose, and the other person will also go through suffering, but if he does not choose to grow, or whatever he does not do, whatever God tells him to do, then he'll end up in hell. Now this is a very individualistic process. Every person is dealt with separately and individually. So you saying that, looking at the holistic picture and all of that,
Yeah.
I think what Philo is saying does make sense, right? Because every person is individual, and
But
God is dealing with them individually.
what do you mean by every person is individual? Because in what respect? Just to
So
go to heaven?
In terms of being judged,
exactly,
basically, or
exactly, in
in terms,
just,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, justice,
But how
whatever
does
should be done to that person. Yeah.
how does it relate to the idea that in theology there isn't just one explanation for evil; it's a multiplicity of. So why should we just
No,
focus
but
on that
but
one
all the
aspect?
explanation that you're giving, the overall
Yeah.
good or gain and all of
Yes.
that doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's a test to check people who'll go to hell or heaven. That is what it is, and that is what it this growth and all of that. That is what it is for.
So
So, for what other purpose? Let me ask you, for what other
mm,
purpose suffering exists?
right. So in terms of theistic, so depends where we're switching from Islam to or generic or kind of theologies or
Mostly
Christian.
Islam, but let's say Abrahamic in
But
generally in Abrahamic or
yeah,
Christian or Islamic view. But if you think there's any other view, then or if you say that you agree
well,
about this
yeah,
on this objection from an Islamic point of view,
I would
then
say
we
there's
can discuss others.
it seems as though there's multiple reasons for suffering. So suffering
Mm,
isn't merely just to go to heaven or something like that. I
mhm.
think suffering is sometimes is to punish people who have done bad in this world in certain views. Suffering is suffering is to, for example, improve the world in this world. Nothing to do with heaven
No,
necessarily.
Martin, but then theologically, that's not why. I mean, I'm getting back into the main argument that Hakim was giving. Why was suffering created in the first place? And that's what his answer is: for building of the souls, or whatever it was that individually is
Yeah.
gonna help you get into
Growth.
the heaven. And that's the particular thing we are talking about. You are right that you can now talk about different ways a suffering might exist, but I think in this discussion, at least, this is what, at least Islamically, that's what they believe. And this is what at least Islam Hakim is talking about here, right?
Well, those yeah, but those. So if let's
Let's
attach that.
Steelman. Let's yeah.
Let,
Let's look at
let's
the stronger
attach,
version, right? Yeah, that's what you're saying. Okay. So
no, no, no.
even
Okay,
what
Let's
you
let's
let's
said.
try that.
no.
Okay.
Let's attach the idea of that all of it is the ultimate goal is heaven and hell or something like that. I'm not sure that's the
Mhm.
ultimate goal at all. I think
It
Islamically,
is.
I think that Islamically the ultimate goal is to worship God. I'm not
I
sure that's
mean,
the ultimate.
I
No,
know
but suffering,
Yeah,
it's a means.
no, that's a different
This
thing,
is what
right?
they say. This is
yeah.
what they say, but
Hmm.
it's if you dig down a bit, if you ask them, why do you worship God? Would you worship a God who, if God had
Okay, so
said
this is
that,
where we disagree.
yeah,
This is where we
it's a
disagree.
slightly different discussion, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we're
So I
going to
think, but that
go
is
into a very
ultimately,
different, yeah,
yeah,
very
but
different.
ultimately, I think I think this is the goal. You want to go to heaven or hell? I mean, you want to go to heaven actually, and you want to avoid
I
hell.
think this is where we slightly disagree. I remember having this conversation 2 years ago, and I do think there's a difference between what we do and what we're supposed to, right? So I think there is a difference between those two things. Right? I think that we should talk about the Islamic goals separately to what human beings might end up psychologically doing, right? So I don't think the ultimate goal of Islam, at least formally stated, is just to go to heaven. I think it's the worship of God,
That I agree with. The
right? So
formally stated goal is not that, but
right.
if you dig down, if you
No,
ask
not
them,
formally stated goal of Islam. We are talking about formally stated goal of suffering. I think we should
No,
distinguish
not.
between these. Yeah.
Right now we're just talking about the goal, overall goal. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
saying the
Goal is,
overall,
yeah,
the
that's fine.
formally
Yeah.
stated goal. Even if you look at it, it is formally stated. Even in Quran, it is formally stated
Yeah.
that we have created this earth to test,
Worship.
people
Yeah.
who will do good deeds, and then we will send them to hell or heaven based on that. So, but this is also mentioned that we have created humans to worship God.
Worship.
But if
Yeah.
you
I think
ultimately
both
ask,
the
and if you
versions.
dig a bit, if you ask them of one or two questions, okay, why do you worship God? Who benefits? Why do you? If would you benefit God if it did not benefit you? So the next question would be, and the answer would be no. I mean, if they're honest, I think they would answer no. They would not, because if it harmed them to worship, if worship of God harmed them in some way, or in the long term, then they would not do it. So which means that at the end of the day, they want what's best for them, which is heaven. So again, I think this is ultimately their goal, even if you say that it is not formally written goal, but that is what the goal is ultimately.
Yeah, but we're talking. If we are talking about the theological goals, right? We're talking about what the theological system is and how it can be consistent, not really what the people's psychologies are. So I
It's
think
not
we
even
just,
just about psychology. I mean,
yeah,
even if you, but
I think we,
let's say, yeah, but
I
let's
think
move
we are
ahead.
somewhat
But yeah,
strange.
yeah,
I think we are
yeah.
somewhat strange from the point though, because this.
But let's
So
say even if it's worship of God, okay. So then, what's your point?
no. So I don't know how we ended up talking about what, because you asked me, for example, what is the point of all of it or something. That's why I said it's the worship of
I
God.
think we were
But
I think we
discussing,
mixed two
yeah,
different things. I think
yeah, I
one
the
think
is
suffering
I
worship.
growth,
was,
the
the
growth
One
question
is
point,
you
right?
were,
suffering. Why is
Growth.
suffering? Yeah.
I was answering your
This.
question. You were going somewhere with the point of what is the ultimate.
I was
I,
going that suffering. If suffering is important for growth, then what about the growth of those who just die immediately, who go through minimal pain, and yet they are somehow, their time
They'll
in,
still be in heaven, right?
their
They'll
overall,
still
yeah,
be
they'll
in
be in
heaven
heaven
without.
or whatever. I mean, whatever growth has
so
to
that's the
happen.
statement. So that's the statement. I would probably disagree on that. Suffering is just important for growth. Uh, suffering is not just
Okay, but if
just.
it's not, no, but
But
Madhav,
that's
but
why
if it's
that's
not,
why
okay,
most.
so then let's
I
just,
think most,
if
one minute,
it's not
yeah,
just
one
that.
minute.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
just 1 minute, because suffering is just not one thing. If you look at it at one thing, if it was the case, then theology, suffering is just important for growth. That's it. The end, right? All suffering is just growth. Then you can probably say these things. Otherwise,
mm,
but given it's a constellation of multiplicity of different things that suffering does, right? That's why you have the
okay.
different theodicies. You don't just have one theodicy, which is soul building theodicy. You've got the greater good theodicy, you've got the free will theodicy, you've got the moral behavior
No,
theodicy.
no, fine, Madhav. Madhav, fine.
You have the
Uh,
compensation
uh,
rationale. You have the
I get that.
compensation
I get that.
rationale,
I
and
get
even
that.
like William Lane Craig, just
Uh,
even like William Lane Craig says,
okay.
for example, it's
Mm,
a connected web of all these things working together. So if one thing doesn't explain that fully, then the other one will in constellation, right? So all of these things are working in order. So whereas one child might, for example, might suffer and that build their soul, another child didn't get the opportunity to suffer, let's say, and it didn't build their soul, but it might be creating net happiness in other ways. For example, net happiness due to some skeptical theistic reason, net happiness due to something in the future that will happen. It might build other people's souls. It's this constellation of things. It's not just one thing on a very individualistic basis. I've not seen it like that at all.
I think, Madhav, then I think what Philo was earlier saying, I think that we'll have to come back to that point. You see, the basic, even if let's say it's suffering is not the only point of suffering is not just growth, even if that is not the point, then I think we might be just be answering, let's say we are answering only what Islam just said, okay, that if this is, he was explaining why suffering is there, he said suffering is important for growth. Okay, so we said if this is with the cases, then what happens to these children who just die immediately with minimal pain? So I think at least if you say if this is the only answer they give, then I think that response that I'm giving right now should be a valid objection to that. Now, if you say that no, it is basically the point of suffering is not just growth, rather it's just an interconnected system,
Yes.
uh,
That's what I've always seen.
of
I've
this
always seen,
suffering, right?
I've
But then
seen
then
all the
yeah,
theodicies
yeah,
working together, not just
right,
one thing.
got it. But then the question would be simply this: you see, we are saying ultimately what we're trying to say is this: if suffering was let's say if suffering was necessary even for this world for whatever reason, ultimately, for whatever purpose God wants to achieve with this. And he wants to say that, okay, suffering is necessary, but at least what he should have done is have as minimal suffering as possible, right? Would you agree with that? As
Um,
minimal suffering as would have been necessary to have this
yeah.
system working,
Oh,
correct?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now,
Again,
just imagine that
it has to be the optimum balance, whatever it is. So,
optimum. Yes, I'm
it,
saying whatever purpose
yeah,
God want to
yeah,
achieve, the
yes,
minimal amount of suffering that is necessary for that to achieve, I think you should choose that, right?
that's right.
Would you agree with that? Okay. Now, my point is this: if why is it impossible for God to create a system where all the people, all souls go through that exact same process, through which that child have gone?
Yeah,
Why not?
sure, yeah.
So again, I mean, so if that is possible, that is that minimal level of pain, if you call that pain, where a child dies immediately, because in many cases it could possibly be even painless for them.
Would be a better
Yeah,
choice of a
suffering,
word,
suffering,
maybe.
or suffering. It might have been zero suffering for them because they were not even conscious. Maybe if they were, it was very minimal. Then
So you're
why
saying
give? Yeah,
so if you're saying, for example, if every child just died somehow, or just the humans just died with minimum pain and then got compensation
exactly.
rational of the utilitarian
Ultimately,
virtue of ultimate, yeah, that could. So yeah,
why is that impossible? Why
that's
can't
not
God
important.
create such a system
Yeah, that's a criticism.
that is minimal?
Yeah,
That's a criticism.
it's a different point to what you're arguing before. That's all.
It's
When I accept that,
I could say
it's
that.
a
Yeah,
slightly.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I understand that, but yeah, I just because a part of it
You're
was
right. These
that,
are very
but
subtle
I agree.
nuances and certain
I agree.
nuances in
I
arguments.
agree.
So
I agree.
you're framing a completely different argument in my mind right now.
Mm,
So it's
mm.
just different to what you were saying before, right? So if
My initial point
yeah,
at the way from the start, I basically made 2 points. The other one was the one that you were referring to, but basically I said 2 points. One was that how much suffering is necessary for this, and then I said okay, and then if it is necessary, then why do you even minimize it? So you were covering that part, but that's why I sort of expanded on the first part, that okay, you could also look at it from this angle. But yeah, from the second point, I think you were expanding on that a bit, I guess.
yeah, I mean, so if you start thinking about how these different theodicies fit together to explain each deficiency on each one, right? You can at least superficially, for example, tackle it. So if you can't explain how, if your original point was, I can't. There's a problem with the soul building theodicy because we would expect maximum. We would expect.
We should try for it. Yeah, that was my second. Yeah, I made 2 points, as I said. So that was what I said. I said then we should try to maximize suffering, and we, at
Yeah,
least if not that, then we should not try to minimize. We should not try to interfere when a suffering is happening.
yeah. So I think that was the initial point, like not
Mm.
stop the thing. And I said something like, for example, they work in
Yeah.
conjunction. Like, your behavior could be part of the net happiness formula,
Mm.
part of the
Mm.
net
Mm.
happiness event. Let's say net happiness
Yeah.
event. So
Yeah.
that's how you can reconcile it, right? And then for example, if it why not? What about the idea of the child who doesn't get his soul built? Then shouldn't he
Yeah.
have more? And I said, and I think I said something even preempting that, which is to say that it could very well be that that amount of suffering, that even that minimal amount of suffering leads to another good end somewhere else. That's how we need to think about it. Like whatever the y value of suffering is, it yields to a greater x, right? Whatever that is, that's what they're using. And but then the point where you became is that shouldn't go, which is a different argument entirely, which is going into the specifics of the. It's more of going into the specifics of why shouldn't God minimize y as much as possible and get the maximum of x. And yeah, I mean, of course, and I'm not sure what to
No,
do with that.
I'm not quite sold on. I'm not quite as yet sold on this thing that the that the utilitarian perspective that you're bringing in? I'm not quite sure. Why does it have to be that way?
What do you mean?
You're saying, yeah, soul building. Let's say soul building is a virtue, right? I mean, suffering is a virtue in soul building, right? So that the more you suffer, the more your soul is built.
No,
right?
that's the thing. I reject that. No. I don't reject it necessarily. I mean, I think theists would reject that. That's not a premise of theism that the more you suffer, the better your soul. That's not.
Okay,
That's not
so
a premise.
what is that limit? Where is that limit? How do you define that limit? I mean, not you, but how do these theists define?
I think this is
What
quite
is the
simple.
difference between where do you
I'm not
cap
sure why
it?
you're thinking about it as that. I think that's. I don't think anybody agrees with the idea of maximum.
No, they don't say it. That they don't say it, but that's the implication of what they say, right? That's the thing I'm saying.
No, I think we do need to think about it how they would say it clearly, because I don't think I've ever seen anybody say.
No, because it is required, right? And it is required, and that requirement itself implies that there has to be anything that you put a limit to it. Anytime you put a limit to it, it's an arbitrary limit.
So it's like saying
that's why I'm saying that the more, as soon as you start saying that there's any level of suffering is required,
all of this boils down to utilitarianism.
And then in my mind there is no limit to it. Then it has to be greater than whatever you think it is, right?
No. All of this boils down to some form of utilitarianism. All of this soul building, I think they end up subscribing to some form of utilitarianism. And I think we all agree that
Mahadan, then it doesn't go through the utilitarian thing, because it's an individual soul. For this world, it might intertwine, but for hereafter, there is no intertwining. There's no utilitarian perspective in the heaven.
No, so what I mean, I'm not sure exactly I understand you. But what I mean is,
so you're saying it has.
Wait, Philo. So, for example, in any, I don't think any soul building theodicy says, for example, the any amount of soul suffering or torture.
I'm not saying that. I'm not even saying that it says that. It's an implication of what they say.
No, it's not. What it is saying.
Do they or do they not say that there is for soul building there is suffering required, right?
Yeah, let me just finish the point. For example, they for example say soul building leads to good ends, right? Now you may have derived an implication from that, which suggests that therefore the soul building is directly proportional to creating net goodness in some respect, either in the building of their souls or whatever that is, building of other people's souls, right? Is directly so therefore, suffering is direct. Suffering of the person is directly proportional to creating this alleged goodness, right? So that, and then you're taking that. The implication of that principle is that the more suffering, it'll lead to more good. And the question that you're raising is, where do we stop that limit? Right? How do you end up defining it? But I don't think that's what the theist is saying. The theist is not saying as long as we have more suffering, there will always be greater happiness or building of the souls. Yeah, they're saying that in hindsight, God has engineered the world in a way where X amount of soul suffering would lead to a corresponding Y value of happiness. If it goes beyond X, it won't lead to corresponding Y value of happiness or something, or Y value of goodness in something, right? It could, putting it in less abstract terms, right? If I, for example, suffer whilst I'm in the gym, right, I might get stronger and so on. But if
I don't quite see where that X comes into picture.
Yeah. If I die in the gym, it may not be the case that it will improve the net happiness. It's the particulars. It's not a general rule that all.
No, but I'm still even from your abstract example, I still fail to understand where is that limiting why comes in picture.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to articulate this. I can see the problem between what me and you are understanding here. I can see how subtly, easily you can think this, which is where you think it is like utilitarianism, but utilitarians don't. It depends on what type of utilitarian. I'm thinking. Let me see.
I don't think utilitarianism even comes into picture in this case.
Huh?
I don't think utilitarianism comes into this case at all, right? I mean, it comes in for this world, but we are not talking about this world. The suffering is this world, but the greater good or greater soul building is not for this world, right?
What does it matter?
Yeah, but then suffering here, goodness is not goodness. So utilitarian is.
I do think theists do say
from a suffering on this world, there is no utilitarian perspective over here, right? There's no goodness coming over here. The goodness is all going to be given to in the hereafter.
That is not a theological view at all. For example, they don't just say it happens in heaven, the good parts. They say it happens in heaven and it happens in this world, right? You may suffer here.
I don't think that's the take of that's the Islamic perspective. I don't think so.
That
Khali will clear out. Khali, what do you think in this dispute? I think this has to. I think there's no.
I think. I don't know. Maybe if that is relevant, but in Quran it's mentioned that God tests some people by giving people giving them plenty, and he tests some people by giving them less.
Yeah.
So in a way, even when you saying that it's good for in this world, I think even when you say it is good, it's neither good in a way. It's neither good or bad. It's just test for everyone, right? So I'm not sure if this is. I mean, my view is this: even if you let's say it is good, what that means is that let's say it's minimal, it's less suffering. But even if it's less suffering, then it's just another kind of test for them. But again, I think when you say overall good, let me ask you this question: when you say in net good, are you saying net good as an overall society, or that net good for a single person? Because again, I think we have to look at it. We have to look at it individually. You are saying that this is an interconnected system. I get that. Yes. But the point is this, that this interconnected system has been created to test individual souls.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. So whatever system is there, you cannot say that God, and I think I just want to confirm, you're not saying that some that majority of the souls, or for the sake of betterment of majority of souls, some souls can be sort of sacrificed in a way. You're not saying that. I mean, that is not an implication of what you're saying, right? At the end, you'll have to say if this is a coherent world, and this is a justly created world, then every soul will be given, every human soul will be given an equal amount of chance, and they will have this chance. None of these souls will be sacrificed for the sake of another. Like saying, okay, God is okay to sacrifice 5 souls for the sake of saving 100 billion humans.
No. That's not so when you say it's when I say it's utilitarian, you shouldn't be thinking of utilitarianism as just in general open-ended Jeremy Bentham, just maximize happiness, lowering pain. It's attached. Whatever is maximizing is attached to very specific particulars, right? There are things that it can't do, right? And that's why different utilitarians differ into how to calculate net happiness and net pain or something like that, right? Right. So some people may think, for example, breaking your finger is X value, and other people might think it's Y value, and so on. They differ in how they measure things. And in terms of Islamic theology, the measurements are going to be different to other forms of utilitarianism. But it does have a utilitarian kind of theme to it, because if the Islamic framework is saying that it's not purely about heaven, that is one of the things. But in this world as well, for example, this thing had to happen in order to some other good thing to happen in this world. And if what I'm saying about the constellation of causes, constellation of theodicies are working in tandem together, then it's the case that it's the case that it can be consistent with not sacrificing 5 souls to save 10 or something like that. It's probably not like that, because they're counting differently, right? In this system, it might be the case that you can't ever sacrifice 1 soul just to save others, right? But it might be the case that, for example, some detriment to 1 soul may lead to a greater good in your soul and in addition to the society. And if you calculate it like that, it works out better. For example, we're all utilitarian. Even I'm a utilitarian to some extent, right? But I'm not counting it in the way Jeremy Bentham is doing. For example, I do believe, for example, I don't, for example, believe 1 person can be killed in order to save 5 people. But I do, for example, think 1 person can be, like during COVID-19, in those circumstances, maybe not treated, right, in order to save. Or, for example, an ambulance going down the street can cordon off the street, sacrificing hundreds of thousands of drivers that day from reaching their destination on time. So we all do these utilitarian calculations, depending how we do it, depending how we calculate the values, and we have the limits. And I think Islam has those limits as well. You can't just kill somebody and that would lead to an increase in happiness and say that's a good thing, right? And I don't think, if that happens, I don't think God is necessarily saying the killing of the person by a Muslim was a good thing in that respect. But I think that what they would be
In
saying,
hindsight, they should. In hindsight, they should, once again, as we've discussed. But I think
maybe.
what I'm trying to say is that and
But
remember,
this was what I was going to say about the hindsight thing. After I kind of accepted it, I was going to say, here's the stronger point. If they think even what we think is part of this causation process of increasing happiness or increasing Islamic virtue. I don't want to call it happiness, because it sounds like we just all Islamic wants to do is increase happiness. No, I don't. Islamic, whatever they're counting as the good thing, whatever they're counting as the good thing, right? Then even the hindsight that you have, the retrospective thought of that was a good thing may not be a good thing. Can you see that? That is, I think a very fancy philosopher in Islam can get away with that. You know, so when you say, well, in hindsight, they should know, because we dismiss the projection thing, because it could very well be in the future prospect of the drowning child. We should help him, because it might end up, our process of helping or failing to help properly may end up, but we don't know which one it is, but we're commanded to help, so we should just follow that. You know, and whatever happens is gonna be the thing, you know. And it could very well be that God even predicted that this is how it gets weird.
Yes, exactly.
Guys, we need to close this argument down, because we have lost all audience.
Yeah,
because we have gone so abstract.
Most likely we have,
we have gone so abstract that now everybody's lost interest.
It could very well be that there's a Kylie who thinks this entire thing, right? What you're thinking about right now, but what if God just wanted to refrain, and that turns into, that could be part of it. Absolutely.
Exactly. Now,
gets into
exactly. You know, in when you look at it from that perspective, anything that happens, now understand, when we are choosing something from a theistic perspective, from an Islamic perspective, where God has given us free will, but He knows what we'll do. So He knows in this situation, but He has His entire plan, right? So He has the entire plan. Now, whatever I do, and remember, when you say good, whatever good means in this Islamic perspective, it does not the overall good means the goodness of the overall existence. Now, it cannot be, you could say that it's just some of the good might be related to what happens in this world, but I think in this world there is no good or bad from a theistic perspective. Now, they do say it again, they use the word good and bad, but actually, if you look at it, whatever happened in this world is just a part of test from their perspective. So whether it's good or seemingly good or bad, it doesn't actually matter, because if it's positive, seemingly positive, it could be a test, it will is a test for them. If it's seemingly negative, it's test for them. So at the end of the day, from an Islamic perspective, what is good is actually good as in the afterlife, because that is what they're working for, right? This is what they're working towards. Their goal is afterlife. You might say that is not after heaven and hell, whatever its a purpose is, worship or not. Their goal is not this life. Overall goal is not. It can be a very tertiary or very sort of supplementary result of what they do, and part of what they have been what to say instructed to follow. They say that, yeah, this will also help make a positive impact in this world, but that is not the overall goal. Their overall goal is not this world. It's ultimately the success in
It's the
afterlife, whatever
afterlife.
it
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
now whatever it means, but this is what the goal is. So
Yeah.
ultimately, we'll have to
Tally, you
look at
finish
from
and
that
then we move
perspective.
on with the video,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
So
we
I
have.
think, yeah. So I mean, that is their goal, and I think from that perspective, um, uh, having these. No, I think maybe I've lost track of my thought as well.
Yes.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Let me just say on the idea that I
More
think
than, we'll move on. We only have one listener now because we have gone so abstract now. Please.
yeah,
Do we,
just give me
should we
this though.
should we go
Just
ahead with the video even?
I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
This
That's
is
what
more
How
enjoyable.
much
I think
time
we
is?
should
This is,
end the
I think
stream
this
now.
I think this
Okay.
discussion
Yeah,
is
yeah.
far more enjoyable than the video could ever be. But
Yeah, I think so. I think we can. I mean, yeah.
so I think the hindsight projection side, let's say, I think that's getting convoluted. Convoluting the issue. Like in hindsight, we should. Yeah, I thought that as well. That in hindsight, and I mentioned that obviously on the stream as well on air. So that in hindsight,
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems
So
as
that's what we were talking about, the hindsight one. Okay, so that I
yeah,
lost my train of thought over there.
yeah.
The
The
hindsight issue.
hindsight
Yeah, yeah.
the hindsight issue would be that we should celebrate all forms. I'm trying to keep it
Mm-hmm,
clear here. So
mm-hmm.
the hindsight issue should be that everything that's happened in the history of humanity is for some sort of Islamic virtue. The greater good is not so it's not merely just raising net happiness. It's not just serotonin and dopamine. I don't think that's an Islamic goal at all, right? But some sort of Islamic virtue that they're measuring in a utilitarian way, because that's the only way it makes sense to say greater good, right?
I think,
So it's
Martin.
util-
I think why I have to stop you over here is this, because you're having this sort of an abstract view of what an Islamic virtue and overall goal is.
yeah.
I think it's not abstract. It's very clear what
Yeah, I
they
think
want to
you're
achieve.
giving too
It's
much credit to
yeah,
them
it's
into something that is
absolutely
not
clear
there.
what the
Yeah.
overall goal is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely clear. Now you think that it is something else, but it is hell and
Yeah.
heaven.
And even if that is there, it's only
Yeah,
periphery of it. It's
it's just
only
whatever
just
you
the.
think
I
that
mean, in
goal
this
is.
world, I reject
It's
the idea. I reject. No,
yeah.
no. I mean, in this world, I don't think I've never seen any Islamic theologian just explain it through the future compensation rationale or pain in terms of happiness and pain that you'll get in the future. It's always been, like I said, I'm just reiterating the same thing. It's been a combination of these things, including that the reason somebody got killed, it did have an impact on this world. It's not merely just what's happening in the afterlife or what's going to happen in the
No, they have to package it
heaven.
this
But
way, Madin,
Yeah,
because
whatever.
otherwise these
Yeah. mm,
simple-minded beings won't be able to see it that far.
Yeah.
That's what they have to package it. That's how it is packaged, I think, right? Because then people
You
feel,
see,
oh yeah, yeah, I have much more worth in this world other than, you know.
you go through the
yeah,
Quran, and whatever again. So when you say that good in this world as well, I understand that this is what they say, that some of these things have some good implication in this world as well. But I've already pointed out, whatever you say that whatever you think is good in this world, there is nothing positive or negative from again. It is, they will never say this because they might not even realize this. but whatever they and it's even mentioned in Quran. God, if let's say, something good happens to a person, right? Well, let's say, Madan can give me an example of something good happening in this world as a result of something, right? What you just mentioned, a good result. Like, give me an example of something. Can you give me an example of that? Anything?
What do you mean? Give you an example of
You
a
you
good
you
result.
said you said that
Yes.
it would have lead to something good. You said Muslim theologians say a lot of, and they just don't focus on the afterlife. They also say
Mm.
that good things would happen in this world as well because of our deeds and whatever, right? So what, for example,
Yeah.
what good things will happen?
So this is generic
Any
through most.
example, any
Yeah,
example of
this is
what they
kind of
think is
generic
good?
across most. This is kind of generic across most religions, including the Islamic religion.
No, no, I
But
get it, I get it. I'm saying,
good
what is
thing,
their
a
view?
good
What
thing
is
might,
good?
yeah, a good thing might be to build souls. It might be, for example, avoiding
No,
other.
in this world, because
Yeah,
building souls is a long term view, right?
no, building souls means in this world as well. That's the thing.
Okay, okay. So let's say buildings, but the building of souls,
It's not
you're
merely.
saying it,
I don't know where you got this idea that it's merely in heaven that soul is built. We're talking.
no, no, no. The soul is
Yeah.
built here, but why is it
Yes.
being built? What is it being built for?
So it's a combination of reasons. Again, it's for things in this world and possibly a future world. Yes.
Okay, for this world, for example, what do you
Yes.
mean? So how will it benefit this world? Give me an example, or one
Yeah.
example.
Sure. So for example, if for example you undergo some sort of suffering, it could be a mild form of
Hmm.
suffering. You may become more courageous. You may become more braver. You may
Good.
therefore, for example, become a better person, and you might
Why?
help other people.
Uh-huh.
And in this world, you
Exactly.
might.
Help others.
Right.
Help.
It's
No,
something
no. I'll
right
focus on
now.
that.
I'm not saying that that's in
Uh,
isolation to an afterlife, but my point here, my simple point here, is that it impacts this world as well. That's all. That's what I want to establish.
you're saying that it also includes this world as well, right?
That's all. That's all.
Implications of
I'm not
suffering
saying it.
are there in
I'm not
this
saying
world as well, right?
there isn't some ultimate gain elsewhere else. I'm not. I'm saying I actually think the ultimate gain, if I had to read it theologically, again, not psychologically, would be to worship God. I think that's the message that I get from the Quran, right? That
Mm.
it is ultimately to worship. So ultimately, everything builds up to that. But that, but I'm not merely talking about ultimate goal. I'm talking about suboptimal goals, or penultimate goals, right, and tertiary
Mhm.
goals, all of that. And one of those goals in
Exactly.
this life,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
staircase of goals before the ultimate one, is building your character in this world as well. That's one theodicy out of many other theodicies.
Yeah, okay. So when you say that the part of this is also building this world, or a part of doing some good in this world, and I think one of the example that you gave is that you might be doing good things to other people, right? I think that so soul building will help you be good to others. Let's say, can I say that?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right now, that's why I said earlier, when you're good to others, that doesn't mean an overall goodness for them, right? For example, your goodness to other could possibly be harmful for them. Do you agree with? You're aware of that, right? From a theistic perspective, you could be good to other, but
Mhm.
that could have an overall negative impact in their overall existence because they might end up in hell,
Yes.
right? Right. So wouldn't you say that that would be a net negative? So ultimately, what
If
I'm
that
trying to
happens,
say is this. Yeah, yeah.
if that
So
happens, yeah.
again, if that happens, so ultimately, what you think might be happening because of what I did or what you were considering as good might not be actually good. So what my point is, I reiterate my earlier point. Whatever happens in this world is neither good or bad because it's just a part of test, and that's why you say that a part of the goodness happens in this world. I don't agree with that because nothing that happens in this world actually is good or bad. It's just a part of test. Some are tested this way, some are tested that way. Even Quran says that this world is kind of a play place. It's not the true thing. This is just the temporary place. You just do things, you go away. So it is in the Quran. So and the way when you read the Quran, the hell and heaven, you're reading that. I know it says that you have been God has created humans to see or to for them to worship God. Yes, but this is mentioned, I think, once or twice maybe. But the amount of time it refers to hell and heaven, the amount of emphasis that is there, even if it had not been there, it had just been there once, I think it would have been sufficient, because I think the ultimate goal for any human then would have been that. But the amount of times this has been mentioned in the Quran, I think any person, when they're reading the Quran, they would say that, well, ultimately you should have that in mind, because that is what they're.
I'm losing
Yeah.
track of the point. So what's your
But
point
the
here?
point is this. My point is this: when you say that something good happens in this world, I disagree with that, because there's nothing good or bad from a theistic perspective. There's nothing good or bad which happens in this world. It's all just a test, part of the test. So I think you saying that some sort of soul building somehow also creates something positive in this world, I don't agree with that, because when you say something positive in this world, actually there's nothing positive or negative in this world according to yes.
Somebody becoming more courageous, let's say, and maybe saving another person or something. This is what theists
Yeah.
might think.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not doing something in this world.
It's not necessarily good or bad. No.
So my point doesn't necessarily even require that, right? So the point, I don't think necessarily even requires accepting.
Okay, not necessarily.
Yeah,
it's not good or bad. I would say it's not good or bad. Being courageous is not good or bad.
It doesn't even necessarily. I'm not sure that interpretation is the exact. I don't think I've had many even Muslims even explain it like that. That there is no good in this world or evil in this world.
I know. Again, Madin, they don't have to explain it that way. I agree with that. They won't say that. But that is implication of what I don't say that is how they explain it, but that is a direct implication of their worldview. I agree. They'll never say that. They might not even realize that that is the case, but I think that is a direct implication of what they believe in. And even, I mean, Quran sort of points to that in a way. Is that
I'm not sure that, yeah, I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure that I get that reading at all. I do from the Quran. I do get the impression that you are being tested for good things in this world and bad things in this world. That there is a good and bad in this world, and you're being tested.
No, I don't think there is I think, Madan, there is no test for good things or bad things in this world. I think that's at least that's my understanding. Yeah, yeah.
How is that
again,
no.
Again, Mahathir, I understand.
It's not.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
No, I'm saying there's no. I think it's not about this world. This is just as
yes, it's not.
A test. Yeah,
it's just a test. It's just a test.
How is a test? So how is a test logically contradictory with the fact that there are good things and bad things in this world?
I'll tell you why. Because I explained to you, when you say, and I asked you for an example of a good thing, and the example that you gave me, maybe being good. Let's say helping someone monetarily. It's a good thing, right? But it's not good, because what it is for that person, it's up to him whether he ultimately he benefits from that or not. So it's not good or bad. It's like a knife. You're giving another person.
I'll be honest. I feel like I'm talking to two different strangers right now. I'm not getting this at all. No, it's not. It's a disconnect.
Why not?
Because it's almost like a dream that I'm in. I'm surprised that you're saying this. Yeah, I'm very surprised.
But why?
Yeah,
why?
I'm also trying to understand you as well, instead of just debating you about the matter.
Sure.
I don't even know what you mean that from the it could be or it could not be beneficial. It depends on him, and I'm still losing you there. Like if
tell me. Let me give you an example.
If somebody goes and helps somebody, I think we're mixing too many issues altogether, and I'm not getting the point, and I don't think a theist would get the point of this either if I'm not able to get the point, right? So, for example, if you go and help somebody, you give them water, for example, and they drink it, and that benefits them. The mere fact that you can't, from the position of the present, predict exactly how it's going to benefit them, I don't think that itself entails, the uncertainty behind it entails that there isn't good in the world. I do see that as a non sequitur, right? It's true that sometimes you may try and go and give the person water, and something may befall, and it may not happen in a good way. I don't see how that point goes to the point that there isn't any good or bad in the world, right? Obviously, sometimes you go up to the people and you do give them water, and they do drink it, and it does benefit them, right? And the other thing is, we're stuck in the present, and I'm not talking about it from the perspective. Hold on, I'm not talking about it from the perspective of where we are right now and what we can predict. Remember, we're talking about it from the perspective of theology, right? And whether there are logically possible theological explanations, right? It is true that from your perspective, you can't predict what's going to go where and how it's going to happen and what. But from the theological perspective, which is an acceptance of something that they accept on faith. Do they have a model to explain how these things can work together? Right? I'm not talking about the truthfulness of the model. We're not talking about whether it's consistent with the good and right. Not right now. I'm not talking about whether it's because I like we said in the beginning, I don't think it is consistent with a perfectly loving, whatever God, etc., perfectly good, merciful God. We're just looking at it alone, whether they have the tools to explain it. And what they would be saying is that whether something disbenefits somebody in the relative sense, like I go and give you water and it doesn't help you right there, or whether it does, it's overall going to lead to a good, right? Yeah. Either
define overall. Madan, define overall good.
I don't necessarily.
What do you mean by overall good?
So it might help
from a theistic, from their view. What is overall good? I mean, when I give someone water, what do you mean by overall good?
Yeah, you're confusing ultimate good with overall good, right?
Okay, so explain overall good.
So so overall good, as I mentioned before, it'll be all of these things, right? It will be, for example, the thirst being quenched. It will be justice on this earth. It will be the stoning of the adulterer in their world. Obviously, they view the adulterers as evil, and it will be all of these things to the build-up of the primary goal. The primary objective, perhaps, is the I would say worship of God, but you could say a secondary objective is going to heaven, hell when worshiping God being primary. Maybe that's how I would see it. So it's all of these things. So the overall goal includes all of these things, not just one thing, which is what yours seems to be preoccupying yourself with, which is.
So just to clarify, I think we should close it and maybe take this conversation in the backstage, right? Because my first question, Madan, is this: when you're saying this thing from the perspective of suffering, right? The suffering brings in overall good, right? Whatever that you define overall good in this life, right? Here and then hereafter as well, right? Is that what you're saying?
So he's saying I think that's what he's saying. He's saying suffering could lead to I mean a lot of it's a part of this interconnected system, and
but overall good, whatever that overall good on this life, right? And but that's not really apparent to me that that's what the theists are thinking. And maybe I think we should take it offline, right? And
let's have this discussion offline now. But I think it's an interesting discussion, but let's have it offline. But I think again, because I have something to say about this, definitely. But
I think let's take this offline, right, Madan?
It's up to you. I mean, I don't mind airing. It makes no difference to me. I think if anybody likes to watch it, then they can watch it if it's online. We could review it if it's online. We won't be able to review it if it's offline. So, it's up to you. I'm not too bothered. I'm indifferent to it, I suppose.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think, Philo? Do you think?
No, go ahead. Yeah, we can go.
So let me, Madan, tell me something. So when you say the overall good, can overall good also be, let's say if you harm someone. Let's say a person is doing something which is not in line with even what Islam says, right? Do you think that could lead to overall good?
I don't know. I'll have to.
It could.
So
It could, right?
yeah. So
It
let
could
me.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you harm somebody, for example, would it lead to overall
Mhm.
good? Yeah. So
Yes.
this goes back to something that I was
Right.
saying in a previous stream to
Yeah.
yourself. I think
Mhm.
you mentioned something like the following, which is that everything has to be good, right? Remember, so overall good is not the same as everything is good, and therefore, I think in order to have a consistent theology here with that Islam that makes sense to the level that we've allowing it to make sense, which is accepting many premises here, right? And then just playing it out with this. Yeah, I think, yeah. So if you go and harm somebody, it wouldn't be a good, no. But it might lead to an good. It might lead to an overall good, or something like that. Maybe that would be a consistent way of thinking about it. So because all these theodicies must eventually lead to some sort of justice, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I think harping back onto what I was saying last time,
Mhm.
it would be something more or less like saying that the crime was wrong and the person will get punished for it. For example, so there is an unwillingness, maybe there is a message from God not to partake in that. It would be better if it didn't happen, right? But there will be some justice, which is or maybe that's the overall good in that sort of circumstance.
It would be better if they did not happen. No, I don't
Yeah.
think they would agree with. You know, no. What? Let me also point out to you at least two people who I can recall, saying, and two Muslims. One is Hamza Tzortzis, who in a debate with the atheist that we have already reviewed, he said there is no true evil. There's only evil from our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? Do you recall that?
Yeah, forget Hamza. He's
Right?
just one person. I do
No,
Muslims
no.
think there's
Okay. Let me give you another. The one
and
that we reviewed in a
I don't
Hindi
think the
stream.
Quranic. Yeah, I don't think the Quranic theme actually
Okay.
suggests
Okay.
to me that there's no evil,
I'll
there's
tell you.
only evil.
I'll tell you why it makes sense. I'll explain it. I'll try to explain it to you in I think maybe 2 lines. There are things which are not allowed in Islam, which are said you should not do, right? In fact, let me word it this way: humans have been given free will, and they've been told to do certain things and to refrain from doing certain things. And according to according to their view, they are free to do whatever they are. But whatever actually happens is in line with God's plan, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so nothing which happens is truly bad. Nothing which happens, because no matter what happens, no matter how horrible that thing is, seemingly, ultimately, or I mean, in actuality, it is good according to them. Now, this is not just one Muslim saying. This is, even I'm not sure if you have heard this. Even in Pakistan, we say whatever happens for the good. If you heard that, right? I'm not sure if you've heard this, but even at least Muslims say this quite a lot. In my, just it's all often said to someone who has gone through a loss or something, whatever kind of loss they've been through, maybe
So it depends.
a loved one. Yeah. So
Depends how you want to analyze that. So it depends how you want to analyze that. So
okay.
I'm trying to say that, for example, the act itself, the murder, let's say, isn't good.
Mhm.
It might lead to an overall good, but it depends how you want to analyze the overall good. So whatever that means. So that could, for example, could be the overall good could be, yes, it could be, for example, theologically even. You might think it leads to some sort of net positivity somewhere, right? Whether that means, yeah. So it could be crudely utilitarian, right? It could be crudely utilitarian, right? Right. Or it could very well be. So this is something that theologians debate internally as well. Or it could just it could simply, but by saying overall good, right? I don't think they mean that in the utilitarian sense, right? They possibly mean that there'll be punishment, right? There'll be justice or something like that. So yeah, so in some sense, so this is the point that people would debate within the internal Muslim community. So I can't really cling on to one interpretation, but some sort of overall good. But what I did remember mentioning in the last few videos, maybe the last video or the video before, I do think, for example, they think that there is evil in the world, right? And even if that leads to a overall good, there's evil, right? The point that you're making, that God intended.
But from a utilitarian view, would you call it evil?
Yeah, so utilitarians don't ordinarily call that evil, no, right? So it depends what sort of utilitarian. If you look through the views on this stuff, it's actually not. It looks like utilitarianism, but it's not utilitarianism, right? So I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call this utilitarian per se. So if somebody murders and then they get punished and something like that, right? A utilitarian probably would say that the entire thing was good, including the murder itself, right? But non-utilitarians won't call that good. They would say that was an evil. That crime was an evil, right? That led to other things that have been good. Right. However, God does not want, because you have free will, for example, God does not want that happen, but it's an inevitable. I remember discussing this in the last couple of streams. It's an inevitable consequence of providing the free will. So God doesn't want it to happen. It does happen. It's inevitable that it will happen. Therefore, they get punished, and there's going to be an overall good out of it. Right. It's going to lead to some sort of justice. But if it didn't happen, it would be for the better. I take your point on the idea
this
that
last sentence.
Sorry?
Last sentence. Now there are few. What you said, God did not want it to happen, and that it would have been better had it not happened.
It gets more difficult. I take your point that it gets more difficult at the idea that God.
Now that I think that will go against God's plan. What do you mean that it would have been better had it not happened? How would whom would have been better and how?
You're getting close. Now we're zooming out so much of the particulars of what we were discussing. You're getting to the point where I'm already kind of in agreement, where I'm not necessarily like if any other stream I came on and we talked about would it be contradictory for God to say I don't want this to happen, but then obviously I'm going to say this is contradictory, right? In every other stream. So you're getting to the point where I'm already in agreement with you here, you know. So because ultimately, although I've been sounding like a theist all this time, I'm masquerading as a theist. I'm not a theist, right? So you're getting to the point, pulling it back all the way up to God now. I agree with that. That's hard to kind of now. If you ask me to try and defend that, I'll just be playing God's advocate, really God's advocate. Because I do think there's an issue there because of at that top layer, right? Where if God wanted something not to happen, but then he predetermined it, right? In any other context where we never discussed any of this, right? I'd probably saying the same thing, that seems a bit problematic, right? But if I had to be God's advocate, how would I do it? If I had to be God's advocate, how would I? I've gone down.
How would you say that it would have been better had he not done it? How would have been it have been better?
I think Philo just went. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So how would I say it? That he better not have done it. So this is how I would say. If I had to be a lawyer for theism, this is what I would try to say. And I don't know. I think because at this point I myself will probably have issues with it as an atheist. So it's going to be difficult. Right? I don't think there is a foolproof case, but the case would be something like this. It will be like the following. Yeah. So it'll probably be Plantinga's free will defense, right? And I don't think Plantinga's free will defense works in the first place. So, but it'll be something like God needed to allow free will. He needed to allow free will in order to have a moral universe, right? I think the first premise has many, many flaws in it already.
Exactly.
So if you just focus on that, I'll probably just agree with you.
Let me just exactly. And let me
if you let that go for a minute, God had to allow free will, right? To allow to have a moral universe. If God needed to have a free will to allow for a moral universe, he has to accept the inevitable consequences of the misuse of the free will. His desire doesn't want it to happen, right? But in order to create a moral universe, he had to, right? Hence why he knows that is going to happen, but he doesn't want it to happen. Very much like, he knows that it's going to happen. He knows, but it's an inevitable consequence of having that sort of free will. And using that free will, there's going to be rape, there's going to be torture, people are going to become non-Muslim. He doesn't want any of that to happen. But so this is why he thinks all of those things are actually inherently evil, right? Inherently evil, and hence there's some sort of justice system. So that's what they believe. But does that flaw? Of course, that has flaws in it. But if you're gonna if you rewind it back to this level, you're obviously going to find something that I can't defend, because I don't defend that. This is why I'm an atheist, and I don't think I don't. In this very video that we were watching, Hakim was about to mention free will, and I was going to attack that using my own argument that I just said now. So I can't defend that at this stage. But keep in mind, when we were talking about all this stuff, we weren't talking about it at such a high level, all the way back to God, right? So I wasn't thinking that far back, twisting it far.
But yeah, I think
true.
Definitely. No, but I think my argument, I mean, if this is how you look at it, I think the argument that I was making, there were some hidden, you could say, implications that I already had in mind, like, that I've concluded that this is already what is sort of, what I said, that the ultimate goal in Islam is hell and heaven. That is, when you read the Quran, when you just look at it logically, this is what it leads to. So now, no Muslim might agree to that, but this is what I have in mind when I look at it. Now, if somebody disagrees with, some Muslim disagrees with that, then I would argue with him that, okay, this is why I said it. So if you want to argue that line, come and discuss this with me. But I think I have a very strong case to say that this is what your ultimate goal is. And anything that, and also when I said that there's nothing good or bad, I again said it from a Quranic perspective, that whatever happens in this world, even if you think that is apparently good, it is nothing but a test, because God says that it is just a test, and test is neither good nor bad. Whatever happens to you, whether it's positive, seemingly positive or negative, it's just a part of your test, and test is neither negative or positive. The outcome of the test is what will be negative or positive, whether you pass it or not. So even if your experience in this world becomes positive because of the fact that somebody helped you, that does not mean that that is good for you. It means you could say that, it is good for you for now, but that doesn't matter, because
that's it. It's good. It's good for you for now. I mean, I don't accept this.
But in that case, would you say that drugs are good? Would you say that drugs are good for me now? Let's say if I have drugs, it's good for me for now because I'm enjoying it right now. Would you say drugs are good then?
I don't know what you mean. How is that relevant?
I'll tell you. It's relevant. I'll tell you why I said use the word. I'll tell you why I use the term drugs. Let's say if something is good for me now, but in the overall run, it's negative. In the overall long run, it is bad for me. It has long-term negative consequences for me. But right now, it's giving me a very positive experience. Would you say it is good?
So if you take some drugs now, for example, and
you have an amazing experience right now,
right,
for an hour or two.
Yeah. So if you're taking some drugs now, and then it leads to some negative consequence in the future, would I say
in the long run?
Would I say it is good in the long run? Well, obviously, I won't say it's good in the long run,
But you would say it's good right now.
No, I wouldn't say that, because I'm not sure what sort of good, what sort of meaning we have behind the word
Because
good.
this is what you implied, right? You said that because you're getting my point, right? Where I'm coming from now.
Not
Sort of.
necessarily.
Because I asked you, I tell you, because you said that it is good because it improves your experience in this world for a while at least, right? Let's say someone helped me monetarily or financially, somehow I needed some help, they helped me financially, but ultimately from a theistic perspective, from an Islamic perspective, it is nothing but a test for me, because he somehow helped me. And let's say if he had not helped me, then let's say I would not have had access to some sort of resources where I would would have got an opportunity to do something evil later on. Okay, because let's say this financial help, I was able to be stable, and then because of that I was able to later on I was able to do something bad, due to which my afterlife got impacted negatively. Had that not happened,
so
then I might not have done that evil later on.
What I was trying to articulate was, it really depends on how you see how you see what we mean by good here, right? If you deflate it to mere additive,
long-term good. I would say long-term good.
Yeah,
I would say long-term positive experience.
If you deflate it all the way down to mere additive acts of future goodness, minus future goodness that outweighs the present goodness, then that's mere sort of kind of like a utilitarian outlook, right? But if you see it more like a deontological thing, and deontology kind of collapses into some form of utilitarianism sometimes as well, and this gets really murky, right? But think about it from the perspective of just us. Forget Islamic philosophy. We have this same issue as well. This is not just merely something that's necessarily attached to Islamic philosophy. For example, if I go and help somebody charitably, let's say, and it turns out to be the case that me helping him, he goes and then kills somebody else and kills.
Absolutely, yeah. It could have negative. It could have.
So you can see it in a utilitarian way, but not all philosophers are utilitarians, and they may not see it like that at all. They may describe it differently. You may describe it as like the entire sequence of events, and you just add it up. The negatives outweigh the positive thing, and therefore it was an overall bad, and therefore even the charity was bad, right? Or something like that, because you helped the guy and he got up and he killed. But if you're not a utilitarian in that sense, right? If you're not a utilitarian, then you'll just think you describe it differently. You'll describe it like the following: helping the guy was charitable act. That was a good thing, but then he got up and he ended up killing lots of people. Your actions did, in fact, lead to something that happened that lead to something bad elsewhere, and those things were the wrong things. But you still did a good thing. So it depends if you look at it like that or in a formal way. And I think I'm more inclined to look at it in the deontological way. Yeah, because that's how we.
So you're saying, okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm not such a add subtract utilitarian. However, I have to say you have to. Even deontology collapses into utilitarianism sometimes, because you do need to make additions and subtractions, because you do need to count how many charities. Let's say you help somebody with charity, and then you deprive yourself from helping others with charity. So a lot of people who are deontologists, they end up becoming utilitarians, realizing that it all collapses into utilitarianism, because you have finite resources. Things impact things in different spiral out of control. You have to count all the other deontological things that you could have done or you did not do, but that doesn't mean you kind of sacrifice yourself to the altar of Jeremy Bentham. Pleasure, minimize pleasure, maximum. You still count things deontologically, and you might count things differently as well, right? To other utilitarians.
When you say, I just want to because sometimes I mix up jargon. So when you say deontology, you mean that whatever because speaking from theistic perspective, is there any, because I might not be aware of this, is there any deontology from a non-theistic perspective, or just would you say it means something to do something? Deontology would mean do something because God had commanded to you, right? Or would it mean something else?
Deontology is not merely exclusively
From
divine
God?
mandate. No,
Okay,
it's
you're
not.
saying just because doing something because it is good.
Yeah. So deontologists, for example, deontologists think that unlike utilitarians, you can't just do net positive, net negative calculations. You can't do cost-benefit ratios merely. There are some things that are not outweigh.
So you don't look at the result. You say the very
you don't
thing
merely look at the
is
consequences.
good or bad. What you do is good or bad. It's not the end result.
You don't merely just look at the consequences.
Right. In fact, you don't look at it, right?
That's a strong no. There are various flavors of deontologies. I mean, unsophisticated deontologists may argue like that, right? That you don't look at the consequences. But the problem is that any theory like that, where you have an unsophisticated deontology without taking into account any consequences, is going to be vulnerable to the criticism that you have to sometimes take into account the consequences, right?
Right.
So most sophisticated deontologists will probably try and entertain different sort of arguments from utilitarianism, and they kind of marry the two views together, right? In order to maintain some deontological essence. Otherwise, everything is subject to net happiness, net utilitarian calculations. Let's sacrifice two people to save, But the deontologists would say you can't just sacrifice 2 people to save 5 people. They have a right, right? They have a right not to be killed, even though the consequences of them. If you kill them, the consequences will be better for 5, but there's net happiness. You're saving more people. No, you can't do that, right? And that imposed on the theistic worldview would be very similar, because I do think there are certain aspects. I think there's a mix in Islam and Christianity. There are certain deontological constraints, and there's certain utilitarian things, right? And I think that's very similar to even secular worldview, right? There are certain deontological constraints on certain things, and then there's certain utilitarian things that you do as well, right? And I don't think it is part of theism to think, or secular worldview. Many secular philosophers would think that giving charity, if it leads to bad consequences, would make even the charity wrong. If you're a deontologist, a healthy deontologist, even, they would think that they would describe it better. Marrying the two views, they would describe it better. The better description, instead of saying you did a bad thing by giving charity because you allowed for Hitler to get raised into a grown man and kill everybody. They'll describe it better. They'll go, no, you did a good thing because your intention was good, your motivation was good, you helped somebody at that point, you didn't know he's going to do this or that. From the standpoint, you did a good thing. And if you cordon it off in general to what the circumstances were then, you helped somebody and they got better. But eventually he went and killed other people and he did the wrong things. And yes, there was an unfortunate consequence of your actions that it led to Hitler to be raised into a man, and then he went and killed. But you did a good thing when so a healthy kind of deontological description of that would be like that, right? Not just looking at the consequences. And I think you can have something like that within the theistic sphere as well.
I guess so, but yeah, from a theistic perspective, I think they often lead to very. They don't look at the utilitarianism directly. I mean, again, it will depend on what kind of religion we're talking about. But I guess from an Islamic view, it is purely a deontology in terms of whatever has been described as good, we're going to follow that. So yeah, I think. But even that, I think it seems to be the case that it is sort of a marriage of these two things. When you look at
I remember when I first one of our earlier streams, and you mentioned why wouldn't a Muslim just kill? And here's an example of what I thought was deontology. Why wouldn't a Muslim just kill a baby and allow that baby to go into heaven? Wouldn't that be the better thing to do? And I objected. I said, no, it wouldn't, because from the Islamic point of view, it's not merely utilitarian at that point, right? You can't just kill somebody and let them go into heaven. But but it would lead to net greater happiness or something, future. Isn't it better to be in heaven And I get it from the utilitarian perspective. It is, in fact, yeah. If you look at it from the lens of utilitarianism, it is. But I remember saying to you, you can say the same thing even in a secular context, right? But we don't do that in a secular context either, you know. I mean, I could go and kill all the old people who are in the hospital right now, free up the resources, give it to, redistribute that to, you know, it would increase maybe the happiness for youngsters somewhere getting better treatment, but it would be wrong, right? And if you think that as a secular person, right, I don't think even from the point of view from an Islamic divine command theory, it would be wrong if from the divine command theory, if you go with the non-arbitrary horn, that there are some things that are wrong, right? And God just commands, recognizes it or something, which is the only way I think you can sustain it. It'll be the case that you can't just kill a baby and let it go to heaven, even though it would be consequentially better for him, because there is a deontological constraint. And I think you were trying to reveal a flaw in the Islamic theology, and I was trying to. I don't think I was able to explain it at that time because you left, I think, or something. But I wanted to say, because if this is a problem for Islam, it's a problem for us as well, you know, because we have these deontological constraints. If you're a moral, you know, if you think morals have some weight, you know, and they can say the same thing, you know, they can think of many scenarios where it would be better to increase the net happiness if we just did X, Y, and Z. But why don't we do it? Because it's wrong to do so because of the deontological constraint. Because not all of it is about the consequences.
Yeah, because I would say, because we value. I mean, like we assign some human rights to people. Yeah, we don't do that. I agree. But from a theology, from a worldview which claims to be better and superior, right? Having and valuing sacrifice and self, and who claims that the atheistic worldview is relies on is sort of based on selfishness and ultimately lead to selfishness. I think my points would still stand that actually the theists are also selfish. Ultimately, whatever they do it for their own good as well.
Well,
Because
that's a different point. We moved away from the baby point, killing the baby. You're talking
about no. From a baby point as well, it would be they don't do it. Of course, they don't do it because they don't feel like it. No person. Most humans won't actually go through it because they don't think that it's right to do, and they would feel terrible doing that. But I think
I would like to talk about whether it's right or wrong from in a philosophical sense, not merely a psychological, right? And I'm trying to say
from an Islamic perspective,
Islamically, there might be a deontological wrong at killing a baby and let it go to heaven, just like from a
of course it's wrong. It's wrong. At least now it's wrong. I mean, there are times, at least 2 instances, where trying to kill a child was actually sort of commanded by God. So at least, you know, from an Islamic perspective, it was once attempted by Hazrat Ibrahim, who was told to do it, of course, but God then changed that child with another animal. But he had already done it. I mean, from his perspective, he had almost done it. And then there's a story of Khidr as well, who killed a child, because had he grown up, he would have become a non-believer. So and he would also have caused disbelief amongst his parents. So that's why he was killed by Khidr on the command of God. So and Muslims often explain it away. Muslims often explain it away by saying that actually it was a mercy on the child because he died as a child, and therefore he will end up in heaven. So now I understand that it is not a ruling now, but essentially God could have commanded them to just do it if you
I think that's
can do it.
I think that would probably be some sort of flaw in the system. Indeed, I mean, of course, we're talking about Islam, and we're talking about if you
even in Christianity, there are instances where this has sort of been allowed.
Yes, that's right. I mean, if you look at the entire theology, you'll find devastating issues like that, and you'll run into contradictions. I'm not sure how they reconcile the idea that the kid was killed and he went to heaven. But if there is a dissimilarity to the general rule, I'd like to hear it. So if there might be some dissimilarities from from that to
They
us
they,
within
they say it's
within
divine command. Yeah,
babies
they would
if
allude to divine command theory then. They would just
sorry?
say that it was commanded by God. It was
Yeah.
right because it was commanded by God.
Yeah.
Simple. At
Yeah,
the
because
time, it was
they'll
commanded by
subscribe to the
God.
arbitrary.
God. Yeah,
Yeah,
right now it was not. Yeah,
they will
right.
subscribe to the arbitrary. Yeah, and it really depends
Exactly.
on
They would.
yeah. So it really because if you it really depends who you're speaking to, which kind of school of thought even, because not everybody subscribes to the arbitrary horn. Like Hamza
Yeah.
Tzortzis wouldn't subscribe to the arbitrary horn. He kind of abundantly tries to clarify that he doesn't. He thinks there is. So he probably want to say that there was something different about the nature of Abraham's, command to kill his child. I would like to. I'd like to hear that. But would that necessarily mean would that necessarily shed doubt on the idea that I think me as Madin that there are some deontological constraints. I think how I would articulate it is that Islam generally tries to have some deontological constraints to stuff like that. It's not merely utilitarian, but unfortunately there's some holes in the theology because ultimately I didn't create the doctrines, and there's some idiots who didn't foresee that would ruin their case, right?
Yeah.
Or at least minimize their case. However, generally when I'm reading the Quran and so on, I don't get the overall message that it is utilitarian, right? But there are some contradictions in it here and there, and that's a problem for theists. So, and you in a debate you may be able to inflate those aspects, but I think so. I think there is an overall contradiction there, right?
Yeah.
There's a very plausible case to make for an
I
overall
think, but I understand. I mean, but the thing is, these contradiction are sufficient enough to highlight the issue, right? And I think this also basically sort of creates, because even one issue creates a hole for them, and I think they cannot close this hole. And if they create a principle which they sort of put forward as an unbreakable principle or a very strong and absolute principle, and then you find out these kinds of holes in that, and then they make up excuses for that, then I think it's a problem for them, particularly from a moral point of view. They often say, this cannot be allowed and all of that, but then you ask, okay, but God can allow this, right? uh, but they would say, oh, God is the master. Then they will again allude to either divine command theory, or I don't know. Most of the time, at least Orthodox Muslims, though, they have to agree that Hazrat Khidr did kill the child, and Hazrat Ibrahim was ordered to kill a child. So I mean, if they and they often forget it when they're raising the moral argument, though, because the moral argument alludes to the fact that there can be the I mean, it's kind of an argument against the theistic worldview, which says that you don't have morality. We have it. We have absolute morality. And because of the fact that we have morality, it can never be the case that it could be moral, this could be moral, or that could be moral. But your morality allows it. Your worldview allows certain things to be moral, which you don't think to be moral, or which you are claiming can never be moral, but they were there, moral, considered moral, even in your own worldview. So I think these kind of holes are enough to have this view. And I think when I raise an argument or I raise an objection, I just don't make them on a surface level, like, okay, uh, okay, this is right now they're saying this, so I'm not going to look at other things. I'm just looking at what they're saying right now, or what they are saying. I'm not going to look at what it actually means. I raise the argument with the view that, okay, I understand what they mean, what the theology says, and what it actually what is the underlying implication of what that theology, I mean, what is the actual implication of that theology. So when I look at that, then I think there are a lot of problems. And I think even from the suffering point of view, the objections that I raised, I think they stand because of the fact that the theology might say something, but the actual implication of that theology might be something else. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of actual implications. And and that's why I brought up the point of hell and heaven, that people don't agree with that. I mean, they don't articulate it that way, but still, when you dig down, when you ask them questions, when you read the Quran, that is what it is alluding to actually. So I think from that perspective, I still think that my argument stand. But yeah, one partially, I think from one angle you did say, or I think, and I'm going to think about it, about the point that you mentioned about increasing the suffering or not interfering with it. That's fine, but I think it's still the other problem which you agreed with, that in the hindsight you should never. But you did not agree with that completely. But I think that it would still be a problem, because whatever, according to the Islamic view at least, whatever happens is in is according to God's plan. Yes, it involves human free will, but nothing that happens is actually truly bad. So yeah, I think I still believe that that is the, if they don't say it that way, I think some people do agree with that. They do articulate it. Some Muslim, you know, people, Muslim, scholars or dais do even agree with that explicitly. But others who don't agree with it, I think they have other theologies or other beliefs which the implication of which is the same ultimately. So I guess it's the same. Ultimately, you would go to the same point where nothing, because even the Quran says that God is the one. God harms you. In the Quran, it says that even in this world, God harms you. God is the one who sort of blesses you, and God is the one who harms you. There are verses like that in the Quran. So if you say that God can actually harm you, well, okay, how does God harm you? In many cases, it's just like human harming you. So then God is sort of harming you through that process. So again, whatever happened in this world, I think it happens for the good according to the Islamic view. And when you look at it from that perspective, then in hindsight, at least, nothing can be bad. Whatever happened, you cannot say that that happened, that should not have happened, or it would have been better had it not happened. I think you cannot say that.
Yeah, I mean, so again, so we're circling back onto an original point, and I think the point that I was trying to say is that um, so the future projection where there's some sort of unfolding act, like a child drowning. Why should we not go and why should we go and stop that? Well, I said something like that. That is something that's
Yeah,
from the
from that,
perspective
what the
itself.
explanation that you gave there,
Yeah.
that actually when you're there, when you should do it, I
Yeah.
guess as of now, I think it makes some sense to me, and I'm going to think about it. I think it that maybe they make sense to interfere at that point, because because again, but the what you said, it could lead to, because you're saying this sort of referring to deontology, because it is good, therefore you should do it because God has commanded you to do it. But I think
Yes.
yeah, because I think still the question would be, um why has, I mean, in a way you could ask, why has God then commanded you to do it? And also, even if God has commanded you to do it, why aren't you actually selfless enough to say that, okay, yes, I understand that the child is suffering, but ultimately I think that suffering leads to good
Well, let me
things.
just let me just articulate
Mm,
something here. Let me just articulate.
mm,
I think what's getting confusing in
mm,
this is that, for example, let's talk about the problem of whether God can create a stone that he can't lift,
mhm,
and then we talk about it in that framework, right? So
mhm,
God create a stone that he can, and then we talk about certain assumptions, but then
mhm,
we try to kind of max out of that, right? And I go, well, it's going to be logically impossible. But then you start thinking about what is logically possible, and if you keep maxing out of it, there's going to be an issue at some point. And I don't think you can discuss philosophy like that if you kind of zoom out each time, right?
mhm.
Um, you don't need to necessarily defend every little assumption baked into that. You accept some certain assumptions, but when you fade off,
For the sake
once
of argument at that point in time, right?
exactly, so you
Okay.
suspend an assumption for a minute, And then, so
Yeah.
when I'm
That's
discussing
fine.
these things, I've been
That's fine.
suspending
That
certain
yeah,
assumptions,
that's fine.
right? Including the Plantinga free will stuff, right? I was looking at a very micro level rather than a macro level, if you want to call it. I was zooming out all the way deep down to the every assumption. If you're going to go through all the assumptions, particularly as an atheist who doesn't agree with these anyway, there's going to be something that I'm going to be like, okay, no, this obviously I don't accept. But within philosophy, you can indeed look at it in the micro level and just talk about it in that micro level, right? But if you take it out from the micro level and talk about a whole host of issues that is connected to, then yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult, right? But I wasn't trying to do the remarkable quest or fulfill the. When I was talking about, for example, I don't think this is an issue where hindsight and I was accepting certain assumptions, right? Right. I was just, for the sake of argument, assuming a lot of things already. One of those assumptions, I think, one of those assumptions that you want to talk about is why is it? What does it have to be there? Sorry, what did you say? It's commanded. You're commanded to do this.
God,
right?
why did God have to command this? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to solve that either, because I don't think that if I could solve that, I'd probably be more inclined to, theism. I wouldn't be getting on these streams critiquing it myself. No, I don't. I
mean,
won't be able to.
Yeah. I mean, I could also ask, okay.
Yeah.
If God had commanded you to do something which would lead to another person's eternal hellfire, you're aware of this, let's say, or you're saying that you're risking his hellfire, well, would you do it? You could ask that question, that would you still do it? Because you're not doing it, you're not why I raise this question right now is because you're helping that person because God has commanded you to do so. But then you also understand that suffering is helping, because your belief is that suffering is helping that person grow and somehow helping him. So in that case, you would say, well, if I do interfere, then yes, I understand that I am commanded to do this, and it will benefit me to follow God. But if I don't do it, then I think it might benefit him. So if you look at it from that perspective, then what's the right thing to do? To do something because it will benefit you, or you're saying that no, because I should do it because God has commanded me to. Again, you'll say that I should do it because God has commanded me to do so. Again, a question: why do you want to do what God has commanded you to do? Why do you have to do it? I mean, I would ask that kind of question. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're saying that you don't, at every point in time, you just don't question every assumption. You just, for the sake of that argument, you just grant them some assumption, and then you move forward. I get that.
Impossibility of whether or not it's possible or not possible for God to create, and then we start talking about whether or not logical possibilities even make sense, or does the law of contradiction works. At some point, you might find an issue with whether the law of contradiction is something that can be justified. Let's say, and in which case you can. And that tracks all the way down to the issue. If logical contradictions can't be something that, I'm just hypothetically assuming for a minute now, because I think obviously what the laws of contradictions are generally correct or whatever. But let's say there's a person who wants to attack that, and that will ripple down to the entire thought experiment of whether God, But I'm not thinking about it all the way up to the whether or not the laws of contradictions can be justified. I'm assuming that, right? So I'm not thinking all the way down to and remember, this is all connecting. Yeah, if you take away the laws of contradiction, defeat the laws of contradiction, let's say with the counter argument and showing that it's just all gobbledygook, then the entire is it possible God can do this? We should be able to do it, or we should not be able to? Might end up becoming meaningless of a conversation, right? And in the same sense, I think when I'm thinking about whether or not it's a good thing, for example, to stop somebody from drowning. I'm not thinking about why would God allow that, or whether it's compatible with a good God to allow that in the first place. I don't think it is, right? And you know that I'm an advocate of the problem of evil, right? I'm just suspending these things for a minute. I'm looking at it micro and saying what they say, and can they kind of on the micro level get away with it, right? But by saying something here, and what is that micro level thing that they can say here? Is it's basically that the reason that they need to go and save that person is because there's a deontological thing about it. It's not merely the consequences that they're thinking about, even if it unfolds negatively. That's one thing which I said later. But the other stuff is that even if you thought about it in a utilitarian way, it could be leading to the possibility of all these other theodicies from being actioned, right? That it could be that your involvement to operate in this particular way leads to the thing to go ahead and lead to the Islamic virtues that it's trying to enhance, right? So if we do stand back, for example, and not do anything, right, that might not be something that God has commanded, precisely because God already. And I know it becomes convoluted here, because what if I choose not to refrain from following the command, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you may say it's true, therefore, that my refraining also was part of this equation, which led to a good theodicy to come true, like a greater good, or whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah, my refraining did, but I think we're getting the tenses wrong here, right? Again, the hindsight perspective thing, right? When how do I kind of reconcile this with theism, Islamic theism? Well, it would be, for example, prospectively, God commands you as a duty to stop this thing. You can now think about it in future sight, right? That well, if I just didn't do this, then it'll be good. Well, you don't know that, actually, right? If I didn't do this, it would be good. You don't really know that, right?
No, I know it.
Sorry?
I know it. It will be. It will be good.
That's the thing.
If I don't do it, if I don't do it, it will be good.
In hindsight, right? In hindsight, because we're getting the
no,
tenses
even
wrong.
if no, I'll tell you. I mean,
I know what you
because
mean.
I just want to. I'm
that's
a bit tired now, but I'm a bit tired, so I just want to go to sleep.
Because
But yeah, but what I want to say is that again, I think I'll come back to when you say this, that when I'm thinking about this, that okay, if I don't do it, it will be bad. Yes, it will be bad for me, but I don't think it will be. If I'm thinking about it, it will be clear to me that even if I don't do it, then it will not lead to actually. It will not lead to anything bad for that person overall, or in actuality. It won't impact God's
that's
plan.
exactly what I mean by the tense switch, and it seems very attractive. Right. I know exactly what you mean. So, for example, you can, because all right, let's concede for a minute that there's no issues with the hindsight problem. In hindsight, everything's good, right? Let's concede that. Now, in the future, there's some problem unfolding, and it might lead to the child drowning. In the present, and it's leading to the future. Right, but now anything in the hindsight is good anyway. So that means anything that you
exactly.
That's what you're saying.
Anything,
yeah, and I think
that's what I'm saying.
I think
that's what I'm saying. Even let's say I'm standing there and I say, okay, if I save this child, it would lead to something good. But if I don't do it, then it cannot lead to anything bad, because the God's plan would still be there. So that means
yeah, that's right.
Anything that happens is for the good. So even if this happens, and if I let it happen, it will not be anything bad ultimately. So yeah,
I think
it will still be there.
Exactly. So you can think that. I know, but you're switching tenses again from what I would be thinking is that what I'm thinking is that what you're doing is you're switching the tense from what's
now. This is no longer hindsight. Now this is no longer hindsight.
No, you are, because you're switching to. So this gets really complicated. This is like Mick Taggart's contradictions of time, whether there's a present, past, and future in the first place, right? So so you're now we're doing a present hindsight, future hindsight, right? Future hindsight. It's like that. It's a future hindsight, right? And the thing is, from the present, however, you actually don't know what you do is going to do the thing, right?
Sorry,
and I think that's
from the present.
You don't know what you do, whether you act or refrain. You don't know which one is going to add to the good thing, right? Add to the
No, but I
overall
do,
goodness.
because if I think that anything that
No, you
happens
don't
is
know
for
which
the
one.
good, then I know it.
You don't because you don't know which one you're going to do.
No, but it's up to me, right? But it's up to me.
It's not because
if I have free will, then the choice is up to me to choose what I have to do, number one. And then I also know that even if I choose not to do anything, then actually that would be the case anyways. That would be the God's plan, that would be the part of God's overall plan anyways. And if I choose to do it, then yeah, that would be the part of God's overall plan, because God knows what I'm going to do. So ultimately,
because if you choose to not do it, for example, it could lead to a bad thing. You don't know that.
No, it can. No, I know that it won't.
Right, but whatever
no, it won't.
you do,
I know that it won't. I know that it won't.
It's really confusing. This is what is really confusing, because whatever you do is going to be good in hindsight, but you don't know what you're going to be doing, right? But whatever you execute to do, right, is going to be good in hindsight.
Yeah.
But the thing that you actually do wouldn't automatically make it good in the future. So going into the future, so if you for example, let's say you refrain from not helping the kid, right? In future hindsight, you're thinking in hindsight is going to be good, right?
Yeah.
Like in future hindsight, you're thinking in the future when I go there, in hindsight, I'm gonna right? But you're refraining in the present. When you do the refrain, it may not lead to that good. Your refraining could lead to a bad, right? It could very well be the thing that you do is the good thing, which leads to the good thing, right? Because that's why God commands the action in the first place, to save the kid, whatever that overall leads to, because you can't predict what is going to be the good thing. Therefore, whatever you're doing in the present matters. So I don't think you can do the future hindsight thing.
I think I can. Why not? I mean, because it's still, the free will, according to the theistic worldview or Islamic worldview, I have free will. And yeah, of course, I don't know what I will choose. But what I know is that whatever I choose, it will be part of God's plan. Now, then the only question would be, what will I choose? I mean, on what basis will I make a choice? It will not be dependent. Of course, it cannot be dependent on the fact that I can, whatever I do, it will be a part of God's plan. Yes, because ultimately that incorporates, that is based on whatever I do. It is, so my choice will not be impacted by it. Because anyways, I know that whatever happens will be the case, but I don't know what will happen. So my choice will not be dependent on that knowledge, on that future hindsight, what you mentioned, right? What you just stated. But nevertheless, I do know, standing over there, that that is, whatever I do, whether I do it or not, the end result is good. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So in the present, if you've got so somebody's drowning, for example, and you could refrain from helping, you can also help, right? And you're saying, obviously, if you whatever you do, that's gonna become a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's what you're saying.
It will be good.
So anything that you do, because you're going to freely exercise it, it's going to lead to a good thing, because the hindsight and despite so it'll lead to a net positive outcome, whatever that might be, right? But the particulars matter, right? If it was the case that you refrained, which will never happen, let's say. I'm just trying to figure out a way to articulate this. So the actual thing you don't do, the actual thing you do will always be good, right? But here's the way to I think articulate it. The actual thing that you do is always be good, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there we go. So God's messaging to allow you to encourage you to do A over B, and encouraging you to do A, and that you do A, is part of the utilitarian route. Now, you could try and refrain from doing A, right, and try and do B, but whatever B is will never materialize, right? But the choice. Yeah, so the choice of the choice of trying to do A and refraining from doing A, I think probably would never materialize, because
I was never going to choose that anyway, right? The other one.
Yeah, I think that would be, you probably have to sacrifice a little bit of that free will, but I don't think free will even really, impacts it. Yeah, so it will. So it was. That's the only. Yeah, but so that's the only way you can make sense of kind of the idea. The idea that
if you give away free will.
Yeah, it's not the case. Yeah, it's not the case. It's not the case that you could have just you could have that any choice leads to that. Just in the same sense of the following. It's not the case that if you open door A or door B, let's say door A contains something red behind it, door B contains something blue behind it, right? It's not the case that whichever door you open is going to lead to something red. Door B will contain something blue behind it, and door A will contain something red behind it. And if, so when you say that,
I'm not saying that. I understand what you're saying.
I could have opened.
I'll tell you what you're saying. What you're saying is that, yes, I'm standing at that point and I'm saying, okay, whatever I choose, whatever I actually choose, whatever I actually end up doing is part of God's plan. Now, yes, there is only one of my choice that is part of God's plan, because I'll only end up doing one of those two things. That's what you're saying, right? So there's only one thing that I'll actually end up doing, and that thing is part of God's plan.
Let me just reverse back on the free. I'm not sure we have to. Do we have to necessarily have to give up on free will?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Even I don't think so. I don't agree with that. I think, and what I just said, I don't think that that actually goes against free will, because what I'm saying is that whatever I choose, whatever I actually end up choosing, God knows it, and that is part of God's plan. And He has incorporated it in such a way that it will end up with a good outcome overall, because God ultimately wants good, so He will make it good somehow. So whatever I end up choosing, which God knows exactly what I will choose, and I will only choose one thing, and that is the only thing that God has incorporated in His plan. He's not choosing that, okay, even if He does that, I know how to incorporate it. No, He knows what I'll choose, and that is the only one thing that He has incorporated in His plan. I guess that is what you're trying to say, right?
Kind of, kind of.
And I'm not saying that somehow for that I have to give up free will. No, I'm not saying that. Because God just knows that I'll choose this.
Yeah, I'm not exactly saying that, because I am going to get, trying to say that there is an impact. There's a causal chain of sequences related to doing the right thing that leads to the overall good, right? And so
but no,
so what I'm trying to say, you can't just forfeit things and go why should, well, I can just do anything and I will,
Why not?
You can't just forfeit things and go, I can do anything, because
What I'm saying is that my motivation for doing
yeah.
that thing will not be a positive outcome. Yes, I understand psychologically it might be. I'm not speaking psychologically. I'm speaking about the fact that when I'm standing there and let's say I'm being very philosophical and stoic about it. I'm saying, okay, let me think about this. Let's say should I save this child? I have to think, okay, even if I save this child, or even if I don't save him, then that would be the part of God's plan, and therefore that would be ultimately it will be for the good. So it wasn't it ultimately I'm not going to save this child because I wanted a positive outcome overall. I'm going to save, let's say if I'm that person, and I'll think, okay, I should do this because ultimately God has commanded me to do this. So therefore, I should do this because it will ultimately be good for me. I'm just telling you the overall thinking process that I will have. But so my motivation will not be to do good thing or to have a positive outcome for another, rather for my own self only.
Motivation will be for your own self only.
Only
Mm-hmm.
because when I obey God, that will ultimately be good for me.
What do you mean?
I mean, you could say my obedience is a form of. Now there are two ways
Mm-hmm.
you could look at it. You could say that yeah, my obedience to God is a kind of worship to God. So I will say okay, that's what I'm doing. Or you could say, well, I'm obeying God because I want to earn heaven. So I'm just said that this worship bit because you said that worship is the kind of goal in Islam as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you could say that yeah, I'm going to obey God because that is a kind of worship to God. That is only it. Uh, Purely philosophically speaking, that should be the goal. But yeah, over there, standing there psychologically, there might be other reasons. But I'm thinking, just
Mm-hmm.
purely philosophically speaking, that would be my motivation to do that, to actually save that child.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, again, hypothetically speaking, if at that point in time,
Well, so in terms of
yeah,
worship, I think that might be an ultimate goal of theism. But I think
the
they
good.
might be they might be concurrent. Like our act of worship might be to obey God's commands and saving the child, right? And that's part of obeying God as well. So yeah, I don't think those things are separate.
they're not mutually they're not mutually exclusive, but there are ways of where there are hypothetical experiments or thought experiments that you can do to separate them.
What do you
But
mean?
yeah, I'm not going to go in. It will be. I
Yeah.
mean, my question. I mean, because they will still, from Islamic perspective, I've given you at least two instances where God commanded someone to kill an innocent child. Now, in that case, you would go ahead probably and
Yeah,
kill a child,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
what does that mean? It means that now ultimately you are doing whatever God is commanding you to do. The question then I would ask you is, why are you obeying God? Why are you worshiping God? Why? If you say, oh, that is my ultimate purpose, then I would say, okay, if that is your ultimate goal, then that means that even if God had attached a negative an element of suffering or an eternal suffering with worship of God, you would still do it. But I think any honest person would say, well, no, I don't think I would worship God if that would mean that I will be going through eternal suffering. But we do they so and let's say, and I'll ask them another thing, would you still worship God if God had not attached hell or heaven with it at all? Let's say God has said, okay, I have created you to worship me, I want you to worship me, but I'm neither going to punish you if you don't do it, and I'm not going to reward you if you do it. Will you
I,
still do it?
Yeah, I've
So
noticed
I
that
think
we've got eight
yeah.
viewers suddenly in this went from 0 to 8. So that's
Really?
very,
People are listening to this?
yeah.
Huh?
Wait is the one speaking an ex-Muslim. I think we're both speaking. So
Oh, I think Schizo Poet have gotten a wrong message.
sorry.
He said, "Okay, guys, I'm Schizo Poet." There's a comment in the comment from someone. Schizo Poet, the second last comment that we received from now, said, "Okay,
All right.
guys, got it. I'm not saving drowning children from now on." No, please do save them. That's not what we're trying to convince you.
Yeah. No. So I forgot what we were talking about. In terms
Worship.
of in terms of worship,
ultimate goal.
you can come up with stuff like is the ultimate goal of Islam is to worship God, and therefore if you command people to kill and that you're worshiping God. But I think that's I think you might be looking at that too, maybe too one-dimensionally. I think ultimate goals can encompass penultimate goals and, like I said, tertiary goals and so on.
No, but if you say that is
right, and if you subscribe to an arbitrary moral command theory, and yes, it's true that that would be a goal, and you're arbitrarily kind of worshipping a arbitrary being. You're just following the whims of the being, etc. If you have a God that doesn't do that, he has gives rights and he follows rights. There's certain things that are good, there are certain things that are bad, and you will have to then not to do. He won't command things like that. If you go into the theology, you're going to find contradictions littered, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the base. You can't. If you go into the theology, I don't think there is any way of rescuing that one unless you try to reinterpret those stuff away. Or you may, for example, say that there was circumstance-specific differences in during those times, or you may, in fact, say that it isn't wrong to sometimes test somebody's faith, but it's wrong to kill. Maybe that would be one sort of reconciliation. Test somebody's blind obedience to God, because ultimately that's one of the biggest good acts of good is to obey God despite whatever happens. I mean, if it was just restricted to the Abraham story where we know he didn't end up killing a child, it's hard to justify. I mean, but you could potentially say, that it was to trust in a good God that he wouldn't do a bad thing or something. I mean, again, this is something that I'm adding,
I mean, I don't think that I don't think that there's I mean, there's the only way out is divine command theory. I think so. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, you could try saying, for example, you're trusting in a good God, right? So one way to say.
I mean, again, you could. How do you know that he's a good God? I think I will start questioning a God who, whether that God is good.
Yeah. But I think again,
or maybe if that had been the case, then I would have said, this command is coming from a good God. I think he's testing me, so I should say no. So I should say, no, God, I think you're testing me. I don't think that you actually want me to do this. So sorry. But that's not what ended up happening, actually.
Yeah. No, I mean, it could. You will need a lot. You'll need a lot more evidence of a good God, etc. But I'm trying to think about it in terms of how does it go from it has some deontological. There's a deontological wrong in killing your children willingly, right? That's wrong, and I don't think any Muslim thinks that it's right to kill a child, right? And
You know
I
what?
think it's
I'll tell you.
theological.
I mean, I'll tell you the answer to the Ibrahim case is quite simple. I mean, if you word it like that, you will say, well, actually, God did not let him kill his child. So that's why I always ask them: is trying to kill your child or attempting to
Wrong. Yeah,
kill your
yeah,
child, is that wrong?
yeah.
So we are just trying to
Yeah,
show that.
yeah. So that's one part of kind of what I was implying as well, that he was trying to test his devotion
Yeah.
and adherence and submission
Yeah.
to a God that he faithfully believes to be good, and that this act that he's going to slaughter his kid isn't actually amounting to an evil, unlike in any other situation, and therefore is still kind of consistent with the idea that it's deontologically wrong to kill a child, right? It's deontologically wrong to kill a child, except for in a situation where a good God tells you that he's killing your child, to kill your child, not because the good God suddenly decides to make killing children wrong. That would be an arbitrary God, or at least a contradictory God or something.
Yeah.
But
But there's the other
because
story as well.
yeah, I
What
know. I'm
was
not
with it?
dealing with that
Yeah.
story yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit more difficult. I'm not
Yeah.
dealing with that story yet. So,
then let's not try to defend this one as well. Yeah, there's no point in
so,
it, right?
but in the situation of Abraham killing it's more so to do with the fact that he's being tested in his ability to morally follow a righteous God, and who he should know is a righteous God, much like a doctor who is good and tells you to inject yourself with this, and you just trust, even though it seems counterintuitive. So he wasn't really being commanded to kill, and he wasn't going against the deontological. God wasn't suddenly breaching the deontological rule of do not kill children or something like that. Yeah, it's more so that he was commanded to do something good, which is to obey a morally good God for some sort of moral lesson. That's the only way I could probably try and distinguish it from every other case of where it's wrong to kill a child. That this wasn't this kind of damning exception to it. We're not biting the arbitrary horn where God just suddenly made it killing children wrong. It was some sort of good act of piety or something like that, and it never went against the deontological wrong. It never went in to commit the deontological wrong in the first place. And Abraham should have known that he's not committing a deontological wrong. Right? His motivation would have been something like, he's a doctor. He doesn't do bad things. He knows about my health. Therefore, when I'm surrendering to his expertise, I am motivationally also thinking I'm doing the right thing. Right? It looks superficially like I'm killing my child. Maybe like a doctor may say, you do this surgery on the child, and it looks like, what surgery? I'm going to cut my child open, but it's for a good. It's actually for a good. Something like that. But when you go to the specifics, you can always, I mean, I'm not a proud defender of Abraham, so I don't really care. But that's the only way I can think of kind of cordoning that story off so it doesn't look like a massive discrepancy, so it can be used. I think the other story would probably be too difficult to.
Yeah.
I do think that the doctor story may have some merit in that sense, but I don't think historically Abraham had that sense. I think if you do a proper interpretation of what was happening, Abraham was ready to kill his kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not only ready, he had almost done it. He had almost done it.
Yeah. So
he had closed his eyes and he had
Yeah.
almost, it was like he had done the deed. From his perspective, he had already done it. But actually, God had changed So he realized, oh, it didn't actually happen.
Yes. So it's harder to interpret the Abraham story in the way I have kind of used the apologetics to kind of, but I think that would have been a better kind of slightly better, or the best. No, I won't say the best. I'm not thinking. I'm thinking about this now, so I'm not saying it's the best, but much better than accepting the arbitrary horn, and much better than accepting the fact that God just wanted to motivate Abraham to kill the kid. Maybe I think a better storyline might be that God was saying, "Look, I'm the doctor. I know more, and you know I ask only morally good things. I'm asking you to now stab your child in the face, right? It's yeah, just like the doctor might say, I need you to now hold your child down, strap him down to the ground, and I'm going to put this knife into his body." You know, and you know the doctor's doing a good. You know, at some point you may think for a minute this counterintuitively looks like he's killing my son, but no, he's a doctor. He's doing the right thing. He's not. He's not. He's not. The doctor isn't murdering your child. The doctor is doing something good. And in similar vein, God was doing. That's the only kind of thing I think I can salvage for that storyline to make it consistent. And I don't know if Muslims even say that. I'm not even sure anything like that. However, I think it'll be hard to square with. I think although it'll be hard to square with the history, I think there's enough ambiguity in the history as well to just fit it in somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, possibly they could inject whatever they want, but yeah, I mean, you could have
How
issues
do
with
you
this explanation as well.
how do you deal with the second one? Let me think about the second one.
I don't think you should even try to do that. I think it's
So the story is person A kills child because he's going to grow up to become a non-Muslim, right?
yeah,
And that creates a glaring hole in the general idea that you're not allowed to kill your children because they're going to go to hell. So in order to get to heaven,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's going to be too difficult to.
Yeah, particularly at this time now, because I think I'm not sure about you, but I'm
I'm lying in my bed, so I'm just thinking about these
yeah,
things out
you're
loud.
quite relaxed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I think if there's still 4 people watching,
Yeah,
does anybody
but
want
I
to
guess
come
yeah. Okay, I don't think I don't have the mental capacity to talk with anyone else right now.
on? Wait, is the
So
one
yeah,
speaking? Which one was the one speaking, Isabella? Because we're both speaking as like pretty much
yeah.
at each other.
I guess yeah. I don't know. I think at that time I was speaking maybe because it has been a while. This comment is quite old.
Well, in this conversation, given that I was trying to defend theism, it might be the case that I probably did not look like the ex-Muslim for a bit.
Well, most likely, yeah. Yeah.
So is Isabella there? Do you want to say something, or I don't think? How long was this ago? This message?
I think it was a while back. I saw this
All right,
comment a while back.
probably not there.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I think we should
Okay,
therefore wrap
guys.
up.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah,
let's close the stream.
and Philo had left. I don't know, without any pronouncement.
Yeah, he messaged. I guess in private chat that.
Oh, what
I
did
guess
he
he's
say? No.
ciao for now.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. Let's just call it a day then.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you for joining. Whoever is listening right now, thank you for listening. Support us if you like our content. Content. I don't know if you do like our content or not, or you like this kind of long discussions where we disagree with each other, um, or we play devil's advocate. So yeah, if you do like that content, you can share us on Patreon and buy me a coffee. So consider supporting us. So
All
okay,
right. Take care. Bye-bye.
take care. Bye.